The rain hammered against the windshield like a warning. Ethan Cole had exactly 12 minutes to pick up his daughter before the daycare closed, but the woman collapsed at the bus stop wasn't moving. Her scrubs were soaked through, one hand pressed against the shelter's glass as if it was the only thing keeping her upright. He should have kept driving. He had every reason to keep driving. But something in the way she stood there, defeated, alone, drowning in a storm that had nothing to do with the rain, made him pull over. In that moment, neither of them knew that stopping would unravel everything they'd built to survive, or that the choice to help a stranger would become the choice that saved them both. If you want to see where this story goes, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let me tell you how it all began. The digital clock on the dashboard blinked 5:47 p.m. in angry red numbers. Ethan's knuckles were white against the steering wheel, rain turning the world beyond his windshield into a watercolor blur of streetlights and brake lights. Traffic on Morrison Avenue had been crawling for the past 20 minutes, and somewhere across town, his 7-year-old daughter was probably pressed against the daycare window, watching for his truck. He'd promised her this morning. Pinky promised, which in Mia's world was basically a legally binding contract. No late pickups this week, Daddy. Mrs. Chen says if you're late again, we have to have a serious conversation. The memory of her serious face, nose scrunched, trying to look stern, would have made him smile if his chest wasn't so tight with the familiar cocktail of guilt and exhaustion that flavored most of his days. The traffic lurched forward another car length. Ethan shifted gears, ready to accelerate, when something caught his eye. A figure at the bus stop on the corner of Morrison and 5th, barely visible through the downpour. At first he thought it was just someone waiting, hunched against the weather. But as his truck crept closer, he realized the person wasn't sitting on the bench. They were leaning against the shelter's glass wall, and the posture was all wrong. Too still. Too defeated. Not my problem, he thought, checking the clock again. 5:48. The daycare closed at 6 sharp, and Mrs. Chen had made it abundantly clear that her patience had limits. But his foot eased off the gas anyway. The figure was a woman, he could see now. Young, maybe late 20s. She wore medical scrubs, the kind with cartoon characters that pediatric nurses wore, though the rain had plastered the fabric so tight he couldn't make out the pattern. Her dark hair hung in wet ropes around her face. She had one hand against the glass, the other wrapped around her middle, like she was holding something broken in place. She wasn't moving, wasn't looking at her phone or checking for the bus, just standing there in the rain like she'd forgotten how to do anything else. Ethan's truck rolled past. He made it another 15 feet before he cursed under his breath and pulled over. This was stupid. This was phenomenally stupid. Mia was waiting, Mrs. Chen was probably already sighing that disappointed sigh she'd perfected, the one that made grown men feel like truant schoolboys. And this woman, this stranger, was probably fine, probably just having a bad day, probably had a phone and people to call and a whole life that didn't require his intervention. But he was already killing the engine, already pushing open the door into the rain. The cold hit him like a slap, soaking through his work shirt in seconds. He'd left his jacket in the truck, but there wasn't time to go back for it. He jogged toward the bus stop, rain streaming into his eyes. "Hey," he called out. "You okay?" She didn't respond, didn't even turn her head. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd thought, maybe 28, 29. Asian features, delicate bone structure, currently doing a poor job of hiding complete exhaustion. Her eyes were open but unfocused, staring at something in the middle distance that only she could see. "Ma'am?" He stepped under the shelter, water dripping from his hair. "Are you hurt? Do you need help?" For a long moment, she didn't react. Then, slowly, her eyes focused on him. They were dark brown, almost black, and currently holding an expression that made something in Ethan's chest twist uncomfortably. It was the look of someone who'd stopped expecting help, who'd stopped expecting much of anything. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of controlled that meant she was anything but fine. "Thank you. You don't look fine. No offense." "None taken." She pushed away from the glass, swayed slightly, caught herself. "I'm just waiting for the bus." "The bus stopped running this route an hour ago. Sunday schedule." She blinked, looked at the empty street like she was seeing it for the first time. "Oh, you got someone you can call," Someone who can come get you? No. The word came out flat, factual. Then, as if remembering that normal people elaborated, she added, my phone died, and there's no one. Ethan glanced at his truck, at the clock on the bank across the street. 5:51. He had 9 minutes. 9 minutes to get across town in rush hour traffic, which was physically impossible even without this detour. Where are you trying to go? She hesitated. For a second he thought she wouldn't answer, that she'd just tell him to leave and go back to standing in the rain like a ghost. But then she said, Riverside, the apartment's on 12th. That's 40 minutes from here on foot. In this weather, he shook his head. Look, I'm heading north anyway. I can give you a ride most of the way. I don't accept rides from strangers. Smart policy. Unfortunately, I don't think you have a lot of options right now. He pulled out his phone, held it up. Here, take a picture of my license plate, send it to someone, text a friend where you're going and who you're with. I told you, my phone's dead. Use mine. She stared at him. He could see her weighing it, the risk versus whatever had brought her to this bus stop, to this moment of standing in the rain like she'd run out of fight. Why are you doing this? She asked. Good question. He had a daughter waiting. He had a life that was barely held together with duct tape and determination, no room for complications. He had every reason to get back in his truck and drive away. Because you look like you need help, he said, and I've got a daughter who'd be pretty disappointed in me if I left someone standing in the rain. Something flickered across her face, too quick to identify, but it looked almost like pain. Then she nodded, just once, barely perceptible. Okay? They ran to the truck through the downpour. Ethan yanked open the passenger door, and she climbed in with the careful movements of someone whose body hurt. He rounded the hood and slid behind the wheel, both of them dripping puddles onto the floor mats. For a moment they just sat there, rain drumming on the roof, the cab filled with the awkward silence of two strangers suddenly sharing a very small space. She smelled like hospital, antiseptic and industrial soap, under the rain. Her hands were shaking and she'd tucked them between her knees like she was trying to hide it. I'm Ethan, he said, starting the engine. Ethan Cole. Lena. A pause. Lena Park. Nice to meet you, Lena. Sorry about the mess. He gestured vaguely at the truck's interior, the coffee-stained cup holder, the scattered receipts, the car seat base in the back that he never bothered removing between pickups. It's fine. She was looking out the window, her reflection ghostly in the rain-streaked glass. Thank you for this. Really. Don't mention it. He pulled into traffic, already calculating routes. He could drop her at Riverside, then double back on Highway 6, might shave off a few minutes. Still going to be late, but maybe not disastrously late. Maybe Mrs. Chen would understand. Who was he kidding? Mrs. Chen never understood. They drove in silence for a while. Ethan kept sneaking glances at her when he thought she wouldn't notice. Up close, even exhausted and soaked, she had a quiet elegance to her features. But there was something else, too. A kind of wariness, a guardedness in the way she held herself, like someone who'd learned not to take up too much space. So, he said, because the silence was getting heavy. Long shift? Something like that. You're a nurse? She looked down at her scrubs like she'd forgotten she was wearing them. I was, past tense. Ethan filed that away, decided not to push. I've got a lot of respect for medical people. My daughter, Mia, she's 7. She had pneumonia last year. Scary as hell. The nurses at County were incredible. Lena's expression softened slightly. Is she okay now? Yeah, she's tough. Tougher than me, honestly. He switched lanes, trying to avoid a stalled car. She's probably wondering where the hell I am right now. I'm supposed to pick her up from daycare, and I'm cutting it real close. He saw Lena stiffen. Oh no. I'm making you late. You should have said, you can just drop me anywhere. I can walk. Relax. It's fine. Well, it's not fine. I'm definitely going to get lectured by a 60-year-old woman who runs the daycare with an iron fist, but that's not your fault. He offered a wry smile. Besides, Mia would be mad at me forever if she found out I left someone in the rain just to pick her up on time. She's got this very strong sense of justice. I have no idea where she gets it. That got him something that might have been a smile, there and gone so fast he almost missed it. She sounds wonderful. She is. She's everything. The words came out rougher than he intended, carrying weight he hadn't meant to share. He cleared his throat. Anyway, Riverside's coming up. Where exactly am I dropping you? Anywhere on 12th is fine. You sure? I can take you to your door. See, 12th is fine. Mom, firm now. The wall's back up. I appreciate the ride, but I don't want to make you any later than you already are. He wanted to argue, but something in her tone said the conversation was over. He turned on to 12th, a street lined with tired-looking apartment buildings that had probably been nice sometime in the previous century. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, turning the streetlights into fuzzy halos of yellow light. Here okay? He asked, pulling to the curb. Perfect. Thank you, Ethan. She reached for the door handle, hesitated. I hope your daughter isn't too upset about the wait. She'll survive. Kids are resilient. He paused, then pulled a business card from his wallet, one of the cheap ones he'd had printed when he was still pretending his handyman business was going to take off. Look, I know you don't know me, and this is probably weird, but if you ever need anything, a ride, or if your car breaks down or whatever, I'm usually around. No expectations, just an offer. Lena took the card, studied it in the dim light. Ethan Cole, handyman services, no job too small. She looked up at him, and for a second he saw something vulnerable in her expression before she tucked it away. Thank you. For everything. Then she was gone, door closing behind her, hurrying toward one of the apartment buildings with her arms wrapped around herself. He watched until she disappeared through a security door, then checked the time. 6:07. Shit! He yanked the truck into gear and floored it. By the time he screeched into the daycare parking lot, it was 6:23 and the building was dark except for the office light. His stomach was in knots. Through the window, he could see Mrs. Chen sitting at her desk, Mia on the small couch beside her, swinging her legs and looking very small. He practically fell out of the truck and ran for the door. Mrs. Chen buzzed him in without a word, her expression saying everything her silence didn't. I'm so sorry, he started. Traffic was a nightmare, and I had to help someone and… Mr. Cole, Mrs. Chen stood, all 5 feet of her, somehow towering. This is the 4th time this month. I know, and I'm sorry, it won't happen again. That's what you said last week. Mia had slid off the couch and was watching him with those huge hazel eyes, her mother's eyes, though he tried not to think about that. Her backpack hung off one shoulder, her coat clutched in her hands. She looked tired. Hey, Bug, he said, crouching down to her level. I'm really sorry I'm late. It's okay, Daddy. Her voice was small. Mrs. Chen let me draw. That was very nice of Mrs. Chen. He looked up at the older woman who had her arms crossed and was radiating disappointment. Really, I appreciate your patience. Mr. Cole, we need to discuss this. My staff leaves at 6. I have a life outside this daycare. And while I understand you're a single parent with limited resources, I cannot continue to make exceptions that impact my personal time and my business policies. Each word landed like a stone in his chest. He stood, keeping one hand on Mia's shoulder. You're absolutely right. It won't happen again. I'll set better boundaries at work. I'll leave earlier. You'll find alternative arrangements if you cannot commit to our pickup time. Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly. I'm not trying to be cruel, Mr. Cole, but I have a dozen families on my waiting list who would be thrilled to have a spot here. I cannot continue to make accommodations that I wouldn't make for other parents. I understand. His mouth felt dry. This daycare was the only one within 15 miles that he could afford. The only one with hours that matched his erratic schedule. The only one where Mia had friends and felt safe. It won't happen again. I promise. Mrs. Chen sighed. See that it doesn't. Have a good evening, Mia. Bye, Mrs. Chen. Mia waved, then took Ethan's hand as they walked out into the drizzle. The truck felt cold and empty. He got Mia buckled into her booster seat, tossed her backpack in the passenger seat, and climbed behind the wheel. For a moment, he just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the tightness in his chest. Daddy? Are you okay? He looked in the rearview mirror. Mia was watching him with concern way too adult for a 7-year-old. It broke his heart a little, how often she had to be the grown-up. I'm fine, Bug. Just tired. How was your day? Good. We learned about butterflies. Did you know they taste with their feet? I did not know that. That's pretty cool. And Sarah brought cookies for her birthday, but they had nuts, so I couldn't have any. But Mrs. Chen gave me goldfish crackers instead. She kicked her feet against the seat, the crisis of his lateness apparently already forgotten. Why were you late? He started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot. I saw someone who needed help, a lady at a bus stop in the rain, so I gave her a ride. Was she okay? I think so. She seemed sad, though. Mia was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, you did the right thing, Daddy. Even if it made you late, it's important to help people. Something in his chest unclenched. He glanced in the mirror again, met her serious gaze. Thanks, Bug. I needed to hear that. That's what friends are for. She smiled, gap-toothed and bright. Can we have mac and cheese for dinner? Absolutely. They drove home through the rain, Mia chattering about butterflies and her friend's birthday, and something complicated involving playground politics that he couldn't quite follow. The apartment building looked even more depressing than usual in the wet darkness. A squat 4-story structure with peeling paint and a broken intercom that the landlord kept promising to fix. Their unit was on the 3rd floor. Ethan carried Mia's backpack and the grocery bag he'd picked up during lunch, listening to her footsteps echo in the stairwell. The hallway smelled like someone was cooking curry, and Mr. Reyes's television was already blaring through his door. Home sweet home. Inside, Ethan flipped on lights while Mia kicked off her shoes and immediately face-planted on the couch. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom for Mia, a converted walk-in closet for him with just enough room for a twin mattress and a dresser. But it was clean, and it was safe, and it was theirs. The walls were covered with Mia's artwork, the refrigerator plastered with her school papers and report cards. Evidence of a life being built, 1 day at a time. Go wash your hands, he said, heading to the kitchen. Dinner in 20. Can I watch cartoons? 1 episode. He heard the TV click on, the familiar theme song of whatever show was currently her favorite. He filled a pot with water, set it to boil, and leaned against the counter with his eyes closed. The day felt about 3 weeks long. His back ached from the roofing job he'd finished that afternoon. His wallet was lighter than he'd like after paying for emergency brake work on the truck, and Mrs. Chen's words kept echoing in his head. Alternative arrangements, as if those grew on trees. His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, saw a text from Marcus, his sometimes boss at the contracting company. Got a job for you tomorrow if you want it. Deck repair in Fairview, $200. He texted back immediately. I'll take it. 7 a.m. start. Ethan did the math. Drop Mia at daycare by 6:45, make it to Fairview by 7, work until 3 or 4 depending on the scope, pick up Mia by 5:30. Doable. Barely. See you there. He pocketed the phone and focused on dinner. Mac and cheese from a box, carrot sticks because he was pretending to be a responsible parent, and apple slices because Mia would eat those without complaint. Gourmet cuisine it wasn't, but it was hot, and it was ready, and Mia devoured it while telling him a detailed story about the butterfly life cycle. After dinner came the nightly routine, bath time, pajamas, toothbrushing supervised to ensure she actually did it, and didn't just run the water for show. Then books, 2 chapters of the fantasy novel they were working through together, about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals. Mia's eyes started drooping halfway through the 2nd chapter. Okay, Bug, time for sleep. Can I have 1 more chapter, please? Nice try. We have the same conversation every night. But I'm not tired. She punctuated this with a massive yawn. Clearly. He tucked the blanket around her, kissed her forehead. Sweet dreams. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, Bug. More than anything. He left the door cracked, the hallway light spilling a wedge of yellow across her floor. Back in the living room, he cleaned up from dinner, packed Mia's lunch for tomorrow, signed the permission slip for her field trip that he'd forgotten about until just now. By the time he was done, it was nearly 9. He should sleep. He had to be up at 5 to make the morning schedule work. But sleep meant lying in his too small bed in his too small room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about all the ways he was failing and all the things that could go wrong and all the weight pressing down on his chest that never seemed to ease. Instead, he grabbed his laptop and settled on the couch. He had invoices to organize, estimates to write up, a bathroom renovation quote that was already a week overdue. The work was mindless enough to quiet his brain, mechanical enough to feel productive. Somewhere around 11, His thoughts drifted back to the woman at the bus stop, Lena Park. He wondered if she'd made it home okay, if she'd eaten dinner, if she had someone waiting for her in one of those tired apartments. He wondered what her story was, why a nurse was standing in the rain looking like she'd lost everything, why she'd corrected him when he called her a nurse. I was. He wondered if she'd throw away his business card or if it was sitting on her counter somewhere, a small paper bridge between two strangers who'd briefly intersected in the rain. Then he shook his head, closed the laptop. He didn't have room in his life for wondering about strangers. He barely had room for the life he was already living. But as he brushed his teeth and crawled into bed, as he set his alarm and listened to the rain start up again outside, he couldn't quite shake the image of her face, the exhaustion, the defeat, the flash of something vulnerable when he'd mentioned his daughter. He fell asleep thinking about dark eyes in the rain and woke 4 hours later to his alarm screaming in the darkness, the whole thing feeling like a strange dream he couldn't quite remember. But 3 days passed before he saw her again. 3 days of the same grinding routine. Wake up before dawn, get Mia ready, drop her off, work whatever jobs Marcus or the other contractors threw his way, pick up Mia, dinner, bedtime, paperwork, sleep. Rinse and repeat. The deck repair job turned into 2 jobs when the client's neighbor saw his truck and asked about fence work. The fence work led to a referral for a kitchen cabinet install. Money in the bank, but time was bleeding out of his life faster than he could catch it. On Wednesday, Mia's school had early dismissal for teacher conferences. He'd forgotten until Mrs. Chen called him at 1 in the afternoon, her voice tight with barely controlled frustration. "Mr. Cole, Mia's school just called. They're asking when you'll be picking her up." His stomach dropped. "What?" "Early dismissal. It's been on the calendar for 3 weeks." He was 40 minutes away, on a roof in the suburbs, halfway through replacing damaged shingles. "I'll be right there. I'm so sorry. I've already sent someone to collect her. She'll be here at the daycare. But Mr. Cole, this is exactly the kind of thing we discussed. This pattern of disorganization is affecting your daughter." The words hit like a physical blow. He mumbled an apology, a promise to do better, and climbed down from the roof with hands that shook slightly. Marcus was understanding. He had kids too, but Ethan could see the concern in his expression as he packed up his tools. The kind of concern that said, maybe this guy isn't reliable enough for regular work. He made it to the daycare by 2:30. Mrs. Chen met him at the door, and this time there was no softness in her expression. "Mr. Cole, I think we need to have that serious conversation now." His heart sank. "Please. I know I messed up, but I can fix this. Can you?" She gestured to her office. "Come inside. Mia's in the playroom." He followed her, feeling like he was being called to the principal's office. She sat behind her desk, folded her hands, and looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Mr. Cole, you're a devoted father. Anyone can see how much you love your daughter. But love isn't enough when it comes to reliable childcare. You're consistently late, you forget important dates, and frankly, I'm concerned about what message this sends to Mia about her importance in your life." "She's the most important thing in my life," he said, voice rough. "She's everything. I'm trying to keep us afloat. I'm doing the best I can." "I believe that. But your best isn't meeting the needs of our program. I have other families who need this spot, families who can commit to our schedule. I'm giving you 2 weeks' notice. I'm sorry, but I think it's what's best for everyone." The world tilted slightly. "You're kicking us out?" "I'm releasing your spot so we can accommodate a family who can meet our requirements. I'll provide references for other daycares in the area." "There are no other daycares in my price range. I've looked. When I got this spot, I was on 3 waiting lists and none of them ever called back." He could hear his voice rising, forced it down. "Please, I'll do better. I'll set reminders. I'll leave work earlier. Mr. Cole." Her voice was gentle but final. "This isn't a negotiation. I've made my decision. 2 weeks." He sat there for a moment, the words not quite processing. Then he stood, moved toward the door like a sleepwalker. Can I get Mia?" "Of course." Mia was building a tower with blocks, her tongue poking out in concentration. She looked up when he came in, smiled that gap-toothed smile that made his chest hurt. "Daddy, look how tall." "That's amazing, Bug. Ready to go home?" "Already?" But she started cleaning up without complaint, chattering about her day, while his mind spun in useless circles. 2 weeks. He had 2 weeks to find new childcare, in a city where every affordable option had waiting lists a mile long, where his schedule was too erratic for most programs and his budget was too tight for private care. 2 weeks to figure out how to keep his life from completely falling apart. They walked to the truck in silence. Well, Mia talked, but he couldn't focus on the words. He was running calculations in his head, none of them adding up right. He could ask his neighbor, Mrs. Martinez, but she already watched her own grandkids. He could try the after-school program at Mia's elementary school, but it didn't cover early dismissals or full days during breaks. He could, Daddy, you're not listening. He blinked, looked in the rearview mirror. Mia was watching him with that too-wise expression. Sorry, Bug. What did you say? I said, are you sad? Just thinking about grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Mrs. Chen looked mad. Kids never missed anything. She wasn't mad exactly, just, we had a conversation about scheduling. Am I in trouble? No, baby. You're perfect. This is my fault, not yours. Oh, she went back to kicking her feet. Can we get ice cream? He should say no. Money was tight, and he had groceries to buy and bills to pay. But she was looking at him with such hope, and he'd let her down so many times lately. And maybe, yeah, he said, ice cream sounds good. They stopped at the small grocery store a few blocks from their apartment. It had a freezer section with a decent selection, and it was cheaper than the ice cream shop downtown. Mia picked cookies and cream, her current favorite. He grabbed coffee flavor for himself and a box of chocolate for emergencies. At the register, the total came to more than he'd expected. He was digging for his wallet when he heard a familiar voice. Ethan? He looked up. Lena Park was standing 3 people back in line, holding a basket with bread and canned soup and a container of store-brand coffee. She looked different in regular clothes. Jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Still tired, but cleaner, more present. Lena. Hey. He felt a strange flutter in his chest, surprise mixed with something else. How are you? I'm good. Better. She glanced at Mia, who was examining the candy rack with intense focus. Is this your daughter? Yeah, Mia, come say hi. Mia bounded over, ice cream temporarily forgotten. Hi, I'm Mia. Are you Daddy's friend? Lena looked momentarily flustered. We met a few days ago. Your dad gave me a ride. Oh, were you the sad lady in the rain? Ethan felt heat creep up his neck. Mia, that's not really... But Lena was smiling, really smiling, for the first time since he'd met her. Yeah, that was me. Your dad was very kind. He's the best dad in the world, Mia announced with absolute certainty. Even when he's late. Okay, Bug, that's enough sharing. He handed his card to the cashier, grabbed his bags. It was good seeing you, Lena. You too. She paused. Actually, this is probably weird, but I still have your business card. I was going to call. My apartment has a leaky faucet and the landlord is useless, and I thought maybe... But you're probably busy. Forget I mentioned it. I can take a look, he said, before his brain could catch up with his mouth. I'm free Saturday afternoon, if that works. Why was he doing this? He had 1,000 things to do on Saturday. He needed to find a new daycare, update his website, finish 3 estimates, and spend actual quality time with his daughter instead of pawning her off on Netflix. But Lena was looking at him with cautious hope, and Mia was bouncing on her toes with excitement at the prospect of anything breaking up their normal routine, and he was already nodding. Saturday would be perfect, Lena said. Thank you. Really. They exchanged information. He plugged her number into his phone. She gave him her address. Same building he'd dropped her at, 3rd floor. Mia asked 17 questions about Lena's job and her apartment and whether she had any pets, and Lena answered with surprising patience, crouching down to Mia's level and treating her questions with the seriousness they deserved. When they finally left, Mia was practically vibrating with curiosity. I like her. She's nice. Is she going to be your girlfriend? What? No, she's just someone who needs help with her sink. But she's pretty. Mia. What? She is. And she smiled when you talked. That means she likes you. That's not how that works. Mrs. Chen says when people smile at each other, it means they're friends. Mrs. Chen is a very smart woman, but she doesn't know everything. He unlocked the truck, got Mia settled in her seat. And we're not talking about girlfriends anymore, okay? I don't have time for that. Why not? Because he could barely keep their current life running. Because adding another person to the equation would be chaos. Because the last time he'd let someone in, really in, she'd left him standing in an empty apartment with a 3-month-old baby and a note that said she wasn't cut out for motherhood. Because I'm focused on you, Bug. You're my priority. Oh, Mia seemed satisfied with that answer. Can we eat our ice cream at the park? They did. The rain had cleared, leaving the evening cool and fresh, the playground empty of other kids. Mia ate her ice cream and then begged to go on the swings, and Ethan pushed her until his arms ached, listening to her laugh, trying to memorize the sound. This was enough. This was everything. He didn't need complications. But that night, after Mia was asleep and the apartment was quiet, he found himself looking at Lena's contact information in his phone. Just her name and number, nothing else. He wondered what she was doing in that apartment, whether she was eating canned soup for dinner alone, whether she'd thrown away the scrubs, or if she missed whatever job she'd lost. He wondered if he was making a mistake, agreeing to see her again. Then he set his phone down and went to bed, and in the morning, the wondering faded under the weight of everything else demanding his attention. But Saturday was coming, and some part of him, the part that had pulled over in the rain, the part that couldn't quite forget dark eyes and quiet strength, was counting the days. Saturday came faster than Ethan expected, dragged along by a week that felt like trying to swim through concrete. He'd spent every spare moment calling daycares, filling out applications, and getting the same answer over and over. Waiting list, no openings, try back in 6 months. By Friday night, he had exactly 0 solutions and 13 days left before Mrs. Chen's deadline. But Saturday morning arrived anyway, indifferent to his panic. Mia was up at dawn like always, crawling into his bed and poking his face until he opened his eyes. Daddy, wake up! Are we going to see the lady today? He groaned, checked his phone. 6:15. Bug, it's Saturday. We could sleep in. But are we? Yeah, we're going to fix her sink this afternoon. Can I come? He'd been planning to ask Mrs. Martinez to watch her, but the older woman had mentioned her daughter was visiting this weekend. I guess so. But you have to promise to be good. No touching tools, no running around, just sitting quietly while I work. I promise. She was already scrambling out of bed, excited about this minor deviation from routine. Can I bring my coloring books? Sure, Bug. Now let me sleep for 20 more minutes. She gave him 15 before she was back, asking about breakfast. They spent the morning at the laundromat because their building's machines had been broken for 3 weeks, and the landlord kept saying, "Next week, I promise." Mia ran between the washers, making friends with an elderly man who taught her a card trick, while Ethan folded clothes and tried not to think about the future. Lunch was grilled cheese at home, quick and easy. Then Mia insisted on picking out her outfit for the visit, like they were going somewhere important instead of a stranger's apartment to fix a faucet. She settled on her favorite purple dress with the twirly skirt and her light-up sneakers. "Why are you getting so dressed up?" Ethan asked. "Because we're visiting someone. You're supposed to look nice when you visit." "Where did you learn that?" Mrs. Chen says first impressions matter. Mrs. Chen says a lot of things. He grabbed his toolbox, made sure he had the basic plumbing supplies. "Come on, let's go." The drive to Lena's building took 15 minutes. In daylight, the neighborhood looked even more tired than he remembered. Buildings with faded paint, cars with expired tags, corner stores with bars on the windows. It was the kind of area where people ended up when everywhere else was too expensive, where struggling was normal and no one asked too many questions. He'd lived in places like this. Still did, technically, though his building was a few steps up the ladder. Mia held his hand in the parking lot, uncharacteristically quiet as she looked around. "Is this where the lady lives?" "Yeah." "It looks sad." "It's just old, Bug. Old isn't the same as sad." The security door was propped open with a brick, probably broken, like his building's intercom. They climbed to the 3rd floor, Mia counting each step out loud. The hallway smelled like cooking oil and something vaguely chemical, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Apartment 3C was at the end of the hall. Ethan knocked, heard footsteps, then the door swung open. Lena looked better than she had at the grocery store. She'd pulled her hair back in a braid, wore jeans and a simple gray t-shirt, and some of the exhaustion had eased from her face. But her apartment behind her was barely furnished. He could see a futon with a single pillow, a small table with one chair, a kitchenette with empty counters. "Hi," she said, then looked down at Mia. "Oh, you brought reinforcements." Mia beamed. "I'm the helper. I brought coloring books." "That's very professional." Lena stepped back, letting them in. "Sorry about the mess. I wasn't expecting... it's always like this. I don't have much stuff." "Don't worry about it." Ethan set his toolbox down, trying not to stare at the emptiness of the place. No pictures on the walls, no books on the shelf. Just the bare minimum of furniture and a sense of impermanence, like she could pack up and disappear in under an hour. "So, the faucet?" "Kitchen sink. It's been dripping for weeks, and now it's basically a steady stream." She led them to the kitchenette, where water was indeed flowing from the faucet in a constant trickle. "The landlord said he'd fix it, but that was 3 weeks ago." Ethan crouched down, opened the cabinet under the sink. "Yeah, landlords are great at saying they'll fix things. Following through is optional." He pulled out his flashlight, examined the pipes. "This shouldn't take long. Looks like the washer's shot and maybe the valve seat is corroded. I've got parts in the truck." "How much is this going to cost?" He glanced back at her, saw the careful way she was holding herself, like she was bracing for bad news. "Parts are maybe $15. Labor's free." "I can't let you work for free." "Sure you can. I'm already here and it's a 20-minute job. Don't worry about it." "Ethan, seriously, it's fine." He stood, wiped his hands on his jeans. "Let me grab the parts from the truck. Mia, you staying here?" "Can I?" Mia was already looking at Lena with hopeful eyes. "Of course," Lena said. "Do you like tea? I have chamomile. Or water. I definitely have water." "Water, please!" Ethan left them there and jogged back down to the truck. He took his time finding the right washers and valve seats, partly because he wanted to make sure he had everything, partly because he was trying to process the image of that sparse apartment. It reminded him of the place he'd lived right after Mia's mom left, when he'd sold everything that wasn't essential just to make rent, when the walls were bare and every surface was empty and the whole place echoed with absence. Whatever Lena's story was, it involved losing more than just a job. When he got back upstairs, he found Mia sitting cross-legged on the floor with her coloring book spread out, narrating an elaborate story about princesses to Lena, who was sitting on the futon and actually listening. Not the polite half-attention adults usually gave kids, but genuine engagement. "And then the dragon said he was sorry for being mean, and they all had cake," Mia concluded. "That's a good ending," Lena said. "I like stories where everyone figures it out." "Me too. Sad endings are no fun." Mia looked up as Ethan came in. "Daddy, Lena used to work at a hospital. She helped sick kids." "That's cool." He set the parts down, caught Lena's eye. She looked embarrassed, like Mia had shared something private. "Pediatric ICU," she said quietly. "A while ago." He wanted to ask what happened, why she'd left, why used to carried so much weight. But Mia was watching them with bright, curious eyes, and this wasn't the time. "Well, the sick kids were lucky to have you. Mia, why don't you color while I work? Try to stay out of the way, okay?" "Okay." He got to work, which mostly meant lying on his back under the sink with a wrench while water occasionally dripped on his face. It was basic plumbing. Shut off the water, remove the handle, replace the washer and valve seat, reassemble everything. Meditative in a way. A problem with a clear solution. Above him, he could hear Mia chattering away, asking Lena questions with the relentless curiosity of a 7-year-old. "What's your favorite color? Do you have any brothers or sisters? Have you ever been to Disneyland?" Lena answered each one patiently, her voice soft but steady. "My mommy left when I was a baby," Mia said at one point, casual as discussing the weather. "Daddy says she wasn't ready to be a mom, but that's okay because Daddy's really good at it." Ethan froze, wrench in hand. They didn't talk about this much. He'd tried to frame it gently over the years to avoid making Mia feel unwanted or broken, but she brought it up sometimes, testing the story, making sure it still made sense. "That must have been hard," Lena said quietly. "For both of you. Sometimes I get sad about it, but Daddy says it's okay to be sad sometimes. He says feelings are like weather, they come and go." "Your dad sounds very wise." He is. He knows everything, except how to braid hair. He's terrible at braids. Lena laughed, the sound surprising in the quiet apartment. Well, nobody's perfect. Ethan tightened the last connection, tested it, then slid out from under the sink. His shirt was damp and his back ached, but the faucet was fixed. He turned the water back on, let it run for a moment, then shut it off. No drips. Done, he said, standing and brushing off his jeans. Good as new. Lena came over to inspect his work, turned the faucet on and off a few times. It actually works. I was starting to think it was hopeless. Most things aren't as broken as they seem. They just need someone willing to look at them properly. He started packing up his tools. If it acts up again, let me know. Thank you, really. I wish I could pay you. You can pay me by letting me know if you hear about any affordable daycares in the area. The words came out before he could stop them, tinged with more bitterness than he'd intended. Sorry, long week. What happened? He hesitated, but Mia was already chiming in. Daddy got in trouble for being late, and now we have to find a new daycare, and he's really stressed about it, even though he says he's not. Mia. What? You are. Lena looked between them, something shifting in her expression. How much time do you have? 2 weeks. Well, 13 days now. And you haven't found anything? Everything's either too expensive, has a waiting list, or doesn't cover the hours I need. I work construction, odd jobs mostly. Schedule's unpredictable. He shoved the last wrench into his toolbox harder than necessary. I'll figure something out, I always do. The lie felt thin in his mouth. He didn't know if he believed it anymore. Lena was quiet for a moment, then said, What if I helped? What? With Mia. After school, or whenever you need coverage. I don't have a job right now, and She stopped, seemed to be choosing her words carefully. I miss working with kids, and it sounds like you need help. Ethan stared at her. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. Lena, you barely know us. I know you stopped in the rain to help a stranger. I know your daughter is smart and kind and clearly well-loved. I know you're trying to hold everything together on your own, and that's... Her voice cracked slightly. That's really hard. I know what that's like. Mia had abandoned her coloring books and was watching this exchange with wide eyes. I like that idea. Can she, Daddy? Please? Bug, this isn't... We can't just... He ran a hand through his hair, trying to organize his thoughts. Lena, I appreciate the offer, but I can't pay much. I can barely afford the daycare I'm losing. I'm not asking for payment. I'm asking to be useful again. She met his eyes, and he saw something raw there, something desperate. I need this. Please. There were so many reasons to say no. She was a stranger. He didn't know her background, her history, why she'd lost her nursing job, or what secrets she might be carrying. Letting someone into Mia's life, into their carefully constructed bubble of two, felt like inviting chaos. But he was drowning. And she was offering a lifeline. And maybe he couldn't do this alone anymore. Okay, he said. We can try it. Trial basis, see how it goes. Mia let out a squeal and launched herself at Lena, who caught her with surprising ease. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is going to be so fun. Lena looked over Mia's head at Ethan, and he saw relief flood her features. Thank you, I won't let you down. We'll figure out the details, he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Schedule, hours, all that. But yeah, if you're serious about this, I'm serious. They exchanged numbers, set up a time to meet during the week to discuss logistics. Mia was bouncing with excitement, already planning all the things they could do together. Lena looked more alive than he'd seen her, color in her cheeks, something like hope in her eyes. And Ethan felt the first small easing of the vice grip that had been squeezing his chest for weeks. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe it would all fall apart. But right now, standing in this bare apartment with a fixed faucet and a stranger who'd offered help when he needed it most, it felt like maybe, just maybe, things might actually work out. They left 20 minutes later, Mia chattering the entire drive home about how cool Lena was and all the games they could play. Ethan listened, made appropriate responses, and tried not to think too hard about the fact that he'd just invited a near stranger into the most important part of his life. That night, After Mia was asleep, his phone buzzed with a text from Lena. Thank you for trusting me with this. I meant what I said. I won't let you down. He stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Thank you for offering. I think we needed each other. Her response came almost immediately. I think you're right. The week that followed developed a rhythm that felt simultaneously foreign and natural. Lena started coming by the apartment after school, arriving just as Ethan dropped Mia off. The first few days were tentative. Everyone too polite, too careful. But Mia had a way of bulldozing through awkwardness, and by Thursday, Lena was helping with homework at the kitchen table while Ethan prepped dinner, the three of them falling into an easy pattern of conversation. No, look, you need to carry the one, Lena was saying, pointing at Mia's math worksheet. See? 7 plus 5 is 12, so you write the 2 and carry the 1 to the next column. But that doesn't make sense. It does, I promise. Let's try another one together. Ethan watched them from the stove, something warm and unfamiliar settling in his chest. Mia was leaning against Lena's arm, completely comfortable, her tongue poking out in concentration as she worked through the problem. Lena was patient in a way he'd stopped being around problem number 15, her voice steady and encouraging. There, I got it. Mia held up her worksheet triumphantly. You did! See? You're really good at this once you get the pattern. Math is still stupid, though. Mia, Ethan warned. Sorry, math is still challenging. Lena laughed, and the sound was becoming familiar. Not the surprised laugh from that first day, but something easier, more natural. They ate dinner together that night. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, but it felt significant somehow, like they were building something, brick by careful brick. Lena told them about working at the hospital, the watered-down version suitable for 7-year-old ears. Funny stories about kids saying ridiculous things, the time they'd had a therapy dog visit, and it had stolen someone's sandwich. Why don't you work there anymore? Mia asked, innocent and direct. The lightness left Lena's expression. I had to leave. It's complicated. Did you get in trouble? Mia, that's not really... Ethan started. It's okay. Lena pushed food around her plate. I did the right thing, but it made some people angry. Sometimes doing the right thing has consequences. Mia considered this seriously. That's dumb. If it was the right thing, you shouldn't get in trouble. I agree, but the world doesn't always work that way. Well, the world is wrong. That got a small smile. Maybe, but we have to live in it anyway. After dinner, Mia begged Lena to stay for a movie. Ethan expected her to make excuses, to leave, but she glanced at him and said, If it's okay with your dad. Please, Daddy. He should say no, should maintain boundaries, should remember that this was a temporary arrangement, that Lena was helping with childcare, not becoming part of their family. But Mia was looking at him with hopeful eyes, and Lena seemed lonely as he felt most nights after Mia went to bed. Sure, one movie. They settled on the couch, Mia squished between them, absorbed in some animated thing about talking animals. Ethan found himself watching Lena more than the screen. She was smiling at the funny parts, completely engaged, and he wondered when she'd last had something this simple, this normal. Halfway through the movie, Mia's head started drooping. By the end credits, she was asleep against Lena's shoulder, breathing softly. She's out, Lena whispered. Yeah, she does this, gets super excited and then just crashes. He stood carefully. I'll carry her to bed. He scooped Mia up. She was getting heavier, growing too fast, and carried her to her room. When he came back, Lena was cleaning up from dinner, rinsing plates in his newly fixed sink. You don't have to do that. I know, but I wanted to. She dried her hands, turned to face him. The kitchen suddenly felt very small. Thank you for letting me stay, for dinner and the movie. It was nice. You don't have to thank me. You're the one doing us a favor. It doesn't feel like a favor. It feels like... She paused, searching for words. I've been really alone since everything happened. This is the first time in months I've felt like a person instead of just someone trying to survive. The rawness in her voice pulled at something in his chest. What happened, Lena? You don't have to tell me, but I have my daughter here. If there's something I should know, I reported a doctor. The words came out fast, like she'd been holding them in too long. At the hospital. He was making mistakes, serious ones. Kids were getting hurt because he was impaired during surgeries. I tried going through proper channels, but he had connections. Important family, donations to the hospital board. So I went to the medical licensing board directly. That took guts. It took everything. She leaned against the counter, arms wrapped around herself. They launched an investigation, and eventually he lost his license. But the hospital labeled me a troublemaker, made it clear I wasn't welcome, and word spread. Nobody wants to hire a nurse who reports doctors, even when she's right. I'm basically blacklisted. That's not fair. No, but it's reality. She looked at him directly. I'm telling you this because you should know who's watching your daughter. I'm not dangerous, I didn't do anything wrong, but I understand if this changes things. Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing. Then he said, "It doesn't change anything. Except now I know you're someone who does the right thing even when it costs you. That's exactly the kind of person I want around Mia." Something in her expression cracked. When I lost my job, I thought I'd lost my purpose. Like, maybe I'd made the wrong choice. But being here, helping with Mia, it's reminding me why I became a nurse in the first place. She's a good kid. She's an amazing kid. And you're doing an incredible job with her. Most days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. Join the club. She smiled, tired but genuine. But you're doing it. That counts for something. They stood there in his tiny kitchen, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic sounds. Ethan felt something shift between them. A recognition, maybe. Two people who'd been struggling alone, finding unexpected understanding in a stranger. "I should go," Lena said finally. "It's getting late." "Yeah. Same time Monday?" "I'll be here." He walked her to the door, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. She smelled faintly of the lavender soap from his bathroom, and her eyes were dark and serious in the dim light. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night." She left, and he stood in the doorway for a moment, listening to her footsteps fade down the hall. Then he closed the door and leaned against it, trying to identify the feeling spreading through his chest. It felt dangerously close to hope. The next 2 weeks developed a pattern. Lena arrived every afternoon, helped Mia with homework, made snacks, played games. Ethan would come home from whatever job site to find them deep in conversation or building elaborate structures with blocks or reading together on the couch. The apartment felt different with her there, fuller, warmer, less like a way station and more like a home. He started staying for dinner more often, letting work calls go to voicemail so he could sit at the table with them. Lena began bringing things. A container of cookies she'd baked, a book she thought Mia would like, little touches that suggested she was invested in this arrangement as more than just killing time. Mia was thriving. Her latest report card came back with improved grades, a note from the teacher saying she seemed more focused and happy. She talked about Lena constantly. Lena said this. Lena taught me that. Lena thinks I should try out for the school play. And Ethan. Ethan was starting to realize he looked forward to coming home, not just to see Mia, but to see both of them. To walk in and hear Lena's voice mixed with his daughter's laughter. To catch her eye across the table and share a smile about something ridiculous Mia had said. It was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous. Because this wasn't permanent. Lena was helping out temporarily, until she got back on her feet, until she found a real job. She'd leave eventually, move on to something better than babysitting in a cramped apartment for no pay. Everyone left eventually. His mom, Mia's mom, every girlfriend who'd met Mia and realized that dating a single dad meant competing with a kid who'd always come first. It was just a matter of time. But knowing that didn't stop his heart from doing something stupid when Lena walked in. Didn't stop him from noticing the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, or how her whole face transformed when she smiled at something Mia said. 3 weeks in, Mia asked the question he'd been dreading. Is Lena going to live with us? They were doing the bedtime routine, teeth brushed, pajamas on, story time. Ethan closed the book they'd been reading, trying to figure out how to answer. No bug, Lena has her own apartment. But she's here every day. That's kind of like living here. She's helping us out. That's different. Why can't she stay? We have room. Mia gestured at his closet bedroom. You could share your room, and she could have the couch. Or, Mia, it's not that simple. Why not? Because he couldn't let himself want that. Because wanting things, wanting people, led to disappointment. Because he'd built a life on self-sufficiency, on not needing anyone, and letting Lena in meant admitting he couldn't do it alone anymore. Because Lena's just helping temporarily. She's going to get a nursing job again, and then she won't have time for this anymore. Oh, Mia's face fell. I don't want her to leave. I know, Bug, but that's life sometimes. People come and go. That's sad. Yeah. He kissed her forehead. It is. But we'll be okay. We always are. Mia didn't look convinced, but she let it drop. Ethan tucked her in, turned out the light, and stood in her doorway for a moment, watching her curl up with her stuffed rabbit. He was lying to both of them. They wouldn't be okay when Lena left. Not really. Because they were getting used to this, to having someone else there, to share dinners and homework help and feeling less alone. And when she was gone, the absence would echo. He should end it now. Should thank her for her help and tell her they'd figured something else out. Should protect Mia from the inevitable hurt of another person walking away. But he didn't. Because he was selfish and tired. And maybe, just maybe, a small part of him hoped that this time would be different. That this time, someone might actually stay. The crash came on a Tuesday. Ethan was 40 minutes away finishing a bathroom renovation when his phone rang. Lena's name flashed on the screen and his stomach dropped before he even answered. Ethan. Her voice was tight, controlled, professional. Mia's sick, high fever, difficulty breathing. I think it might be serious. The world tilted. How high? 103.8 and climbing. I gave her children's ibuprofen, but it's not coming down. She's coughing, says her chest hurts. I think you need to take her to the ER. He was already grabbing his tools, shoving them in the truck bed. I'm on my way. 20 minutes. I don't think we have 20 minutes. His hands went cold. What? Her breathing's getting worse, shallow, rapid. Her lips are starting to look dusky. Ethan, I'm a pediatric ICU nurse. I know what respiratory distress looks like, and this is... You need to meet us at County Hospital. Us? I'm calling an ambulance. I'll ride with her, but you need to get there as fast as you can. The phone went dead. Ethan stood frozen for 5 seconds, his brain refusing to process what he'd just heard. Then training kicked in. The same training that had gotten him through Mia's first ER visit, through every fever and fall and middle-of-the-night panic. He called his client, left a message about an emergency, and peeled out of the driveway. The drive to County Hospital was a blur of traffic and red lights, and his heart trying to pound out of his chest. He kept seeing Mia's face from this morning, bright and happy, complaining about having to wear a jacket. She'd seemed fine. Completely fine. How did fine turn into an ambulance in 6 hours? He made it to the hospital in 18 minutes, abandoned his truck in the fire lane, and sprinted for the ER entrance. Inside was chaos, people in the waiting room, nurses at the desk, overhead pages crackling. My daughter, he gasped at the desk. Mia Cole. She came in by ambulance. Room 7, the nurse said, already typing. Through those doors, take a left. He ran. Room 7 was halfway down the hall, the curtain partially drawn. He burst in and stopped dead. Mia was on the bed, oxygen mask over her face, leads stuck to her chest. She looked tiny under the hospital blanket, her skin pale and her eyes too big. An IV ran into her arm. Machines beeped steadily, and Lena was there, standing beside the bed, talking quietly to a doctor. She'd changed, was wearing scrubs borrowed from somewhere, her hair pulled back. She looked like she belonged here, authoritative and calm, nothing like the lost woman from the bus stop. Daddy! Mia's voice was muffled behind the oxygen mask, but the relief in it broke something in his chest. He was at her side in 2 steps, taking her hand carefully around the IV. Hey, Bug, I'm here. I'm right here. I don't feel good. I know, baby, but they're going to fix you up, okay? These are the good people. The doctor, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, turned to him. Mr. Cole? I'm Dr. Morrison. Your daughter has pneumonia, fairly severe. The oxygen saturation was dropping when she arrived, which is why we've got her on supplemental O2. We're starting IV antibiotics and fluids. She'll need to be admitted for observation, probably a few days. Pneumonia. The word from last year. the one that had terrified him then and terrified him now. Is she going to be okay? We caught it early enough. If she'd waited another hour or two. Dr. Morrison glanced at Lena. Your friend made the right call bringing her in when she did. Ethan looked at Lena, who was watching Mia with an expression he couldn't quite read. Focused, professional. But underneath, something that looked like fear. Thank you, he said. I just did what needed to be done. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly. A nurse came in, started adjusting monitors. Dr. Morrison explained the treatment plan. Antibiotics, respiratory therapy, monitoring. The words washed over him, half heard. He couldn't stop looking at Mia, at the oxygen mask and the IV and how small she seemed. Can I stay with her? He asked. Of course. We'll get you set up in a room upstairs once the antibiotics finish their first dose. Dr. Morrison made a note on her chart. She's in good hands, Mr. Cole. The doctor left. The nurse finished her checks and followed. Suddenly it was just the three of them in the small room, machines beeping, Mia's breathing audible through the oxygen. You saved her, Ethan said quietly. Lena shook her head. I just recognized the signs. Any nurse wasn't there. You were. He felt his throat tighten. If you hadn't been there, if I'd been alone with her, I wouldn't have known. I would have thought it was just a cold. I would have waited and... Don't. Lena's voice was firm. Don't do that. You're a good father. You would have figured it out. Maybe, maybe not. He looked at Mia, who'd closed her eyes, breathing easier now with the oxygen. I can't lose her, Lena. She's everything. You won't. She's strong, and she's getting good care. Lena moved closer, stood beside him at the bed. And you're not alone. I'm here. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning beyond the immediate crisis. He turned to look at her, really look at her, and saw past the professional nurse mask to the woman underneath. The one who'd been standing in the rain, defeated and lost. The one who'd shown up every day for 3 weeks, slowly becoming part of their lives. The one who'd just saved his daughter. You didn't have to do this, he said. Any of it. Helping with Mia, being here, calling the ambulance. You could have just walked away. No. She met his eyes. I really couldn't. They moved Mia upstairs 2 hours later, to a pediatric floor that smelled like antiseptic and had cartoon characters painted on the walls. The room was small but private, with a reclining chair that converted into a makeshift bed for parents. Ethan helped the nurses get Mia settled while Lena stood back, watching with that professional distance she'd maintained since they'd arrived at the hospital. Once Mia was comfortable, oxygen levels stable, antibiotics flowing into her veins, the nurses left them alone. Mia had dozed off somewhere between the elevator and the room, her small hand still clutching Ethan's fingers. You should go home, Ethan said to Lena. Get some rest. You've done enough. I can stay if you need me to. I'll be fine. It's just sitting here watching her sleep. He tried for a smile, didn't quite manage it. Seriously, go home. Lena hesitated, then nodded. Call me if anything changes, anything at all. I will. She gathered her things, her purse, her jacket, but paused at the door. Ethan, she's going to be okay. I know it's scary, but kids bounce back from pneumonia faster than you'd think. In a few days, she'll be complaining about being bored. Yeah. He looked at his daughter, at the rise and fall of her chest under the hospital blanket. Thanks for today, for knowing what to do. That's what I'm trained for. She said it matter-of-factly, but something flickered across her face. I'll see you tomorrow. Then she was gone, and Ethan was alone with his sleeping daughter and the quiet beeping of monitors. The night stretched out long and anxious. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting IV rates, offering him coffee he didn't want. Mia woke up a few times, confused, scared, asking for water and complaining that her chest hurt. Each time, he soothed her back to sleep, helpless to do anything but hold her hand and promise her everything would be okay. Sometime around 3 a.m, exhaustion finally dragged him under. He slept in fits and starts in the uncomfortable chair, jerking awake at every sound, every change in the monitor's rhythm. When dawn filtered through the window, pale and gray, he felt like he'd been hit by a truck. His back screamed from the chair, his mouth tasted like stale hospital air, and his brain felt wrapped in cotton. But Mia was still breathing steadily, color starting to return to her cheeks. Dr. Morrison came by during morning rounds, checked Mia's chart, listened to her lungs. She's responding well to the antibiotics. If this trend continues, we might be able to send her home in 3 or 4 days. 3 or 4 days. Ethan did the math. Missed work, lost income, bills that wouldn't wait. But Mia was getting better, and that was all that mattered. Marcus called around 8. Ethan stepped into the hallway to take it. "Hey man, how's your daughter?" "Pneumonia? She's stable now, but I'm going to be out for the rest of the week at least." A pause. "That's rough. Look, I hate to do this, but I had you scheduled for the Henderson job starting tomorrow. If you can't make it, I need to give it to someone else." "I understand." Another job lost. Another hit to his already strained finances. "I'll call you when she's better. See what else is coming up." "Thanks, Marcus." He hung up and leaned against the wall, trying to breathe through the tightness in his chest. The Henderson job was supposed to be a big one. At least a week of work, maybe 2. That was groceries and rent and the margin he needed to not drown. Gone now. His phone buzzed again, a text from Lena. "How is she?" "Better. Doctor says 3 or 4 more days. Good. Do you need anything? Food, clean clothes? Someone to bring your truck back from the fire lane before it gets towed?" He'd completely forgotten about the truck. He texted back the key's location, felt a rush of gratitude mixed with something more complicated. She'd already done so much. Too much, maybe. "Thank you. I owe you. You don't owe me anything. I'll stop by this afternoon." She showed up around 2, carrying a duffel bag and a paper bag that smelled like actual food. Mia was awake, sitting up in bed and watching cartoons with the volume low. "Lena!" Her voice was hoarse but excited. "You came back!" "Of course I did. I brought presents." Lena set the bags down, pulled out a coloring book and a new set of markers. "I figured you might be getting bored." "I am. There's nothing to do here except watch TV and sleep." "Well, now you can color. And I brought your dad some real food because hospital cafeteria food is terrible." She handed Ethan the paper bag. "Turkey sandwich, chips, coffee. Nothing fancy, but better than whatever you've been eating." He hadn't eaten since yesterday's lunch. The smell of coffee alone nearly made him weep. "You didn't have to do this." "I know, but I wanted to." She pulled up the second chair, sat down next to Mia's bed. "So, what are we watching?" The afternoon passed easier with her there. Lena entertained Mia with stories from the hospital, funny ones, carefully edited, and helped her color elaborate pictures that they taped to the walls. When the respiratory therapist came for Mia's breathing treatment, Lena explained what was happening in terms that made sense to a 7-year-old, turning something scary into something manageable. Ethan watched them together and felt something shift in his chest. The way Lena's whole demeanor changed around Mia, softer, more open. The way Mia responded to her, trusting and easy. This wasn't just helping out anymore. This was something else, something that terrified him. When visiting hours ended and Lena had to leave, Mia's face fell. "Do you have to go?" "I'm afraid so, but I'll be back tomorrow, okay? And you're going to keep getting better, and soon you'll be home annoying your dad in your own apartment instead of this boring hospital." "I don't annoy him." "Sure you don't." Lena smiled, squeezed Mia's hand. "Rest up, kiddo." Ethan walked her to the elevator, suddenly aware that they were alone in the hallway for the first time all day. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything feel slightly unreal. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. The food, the visit, keeping her spirits up. I don't know how to—" "You don't have to keep thanking me." Lena pressed the elevator button. "I care about her, about both of you." The words hung between them. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but the elevator dinged and the doors slid open. She stepped inside, turned to face him. "Ethan." She stopped, seemed to reconsider whatever she was going to say. "Get some sleep tonight. You look exhausted." "I will, probably." The doors started to close. At the last second, she reached out to stop them. "I meant it. What I said earlier. You're not alone in this." Then the doors closed, and she was gone. And Ethan stood in the empty hallway, trying to figure out when exactly his carefully controlled life had started spinning out of his grip. The next 2 days followed the same pattern. Lena showed up every afternoon, stayed for hours, brought food and entertainment, and a calm presence that made everything feel less overwhelming. Mia's condition improved steadily, Oxygen levels rising, fever breaking, lungs clearing. By Thursday, doctor. Morrison was talking about discharge on Friday. Thursday evening, after Lena left and Mia was sleeping, Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Cole, this is Janet Richards from Riverside Medical Center. His stomach dropped. Riverside Medical, that was where Lena had worked. Yes? I'm calling regarding Lena Park. I understand she's been providing childcare for your daughter? That's right. His voice came out cautious, guarded. I wanted to reach out personally to let you know that Ms. Park is no longer affiliated with our hospital. She left under difficult circumstances, and while I can't discuss details due to privacy regulations, I felt it was important that you be aware. I know about the circumstances, she told me. A pause. Did she tell you that her actions jeopardized the hospital's relationship with one of our most important benefactors? That her inability to follow proper channels cost our pediatric wing a significant donation? She told me she reported a doctor who was endangering children. She told you her version? The woman's voice was cool, professional. I'm simply suggesting that you might want to reconsider your child care arrangements. Ms. Park has demonstrated questionable judgment in the past. Something hot and angry flared in Ethan's chest. Let me make sure I understand. You're calling to tell me not to trust the woman who just saved my daughter's life by recognizing pneumonia and getting her to the hospital in time? The woman who's been nothing but professional and caring? I'm simply providing information. Information designed to make me doubt someone who did the right thing at great personal cost. I think we're done here. He hung up before she could respond, hands shaking with anger. So that was how it was. They couldn't punish Lena any more professionally, so they were trying to sabotage her personally, making sure she couldn't even get unpaid work without someone calling to poison the well. He sat there in the dim hospital room, listening to Mia breathe, and felt a fierce protectiveness rise up. Not just for his daughter, but for Lena, for the woman who'd lost everything because she'd chosen to protect kids over protecting politics. She'd told him the truth. She'd been upfront about her past. And when it mattered most, she'd been exactly who she said she was. He didn't mention the call to Lena the next day. Mia was being discharged, and the focus was on getting her home, getting her settled, making sure she continued the antibiotics, and followed up with her pediatrician. Lena helped him pack up the room, carried Mia's get-well drawings, and made sure he had all the discharge instructions straight. In the hospital parking lot, with Mia buckled into the truck and half asleep already, Lena handed him a folder. What's this? Aftercare instructions. When to call the doctor, warning signs to watch for, tips for helping her recover. I wrote it all down so you wouldn't have to remember everything. He looked at the neat handwriting, the organized information, the care that had gone into preparing this. You're incredible. You know that? She looked uncomfortable with the praise. I just did what any nurse would do. No, not any nurse. You. He wanted to tell her about the phone call, about how her former employer was trying to hurt her even now. But Mia was in the truck, and this wasn't the time. Can we talk? Tomorrow, maybe? After Mia's settled? Something flickered across Lena's face. Wariness, maybe, or fear. Is something wrong? No, we should talk about everything. Okay. She nodded slowly. Tomorrow. That night, Ethan got Mia settled at home in her own bed, gave her medication on schedule, and sat up late thinking about the past few weeks. About how Lena had appeared in his life like an answer to a question he hadn't known how to ask. About how quickly she'd become essential, not just to his logistics, but to his days, to the small moments that made up a life. About how much it was going to hurt when she left. Because she would leave. People always did. His mother had left when he was 16, walking out on his dad with barely a note. Mia's mother had left when things got hard, when being a parent stopped being an idea and became a screaming reality. Every relationship he'd tried since had ended the same way. Women who claimed they were okay with the single dad thing until they realized it meant they'd never be first. He'd learned to protect himself, to keep his distance, to build walls high enough that disappointment couldn't reach him. But Lena had somehow slipped past those walls, and now he was in freefall, terrified of the landing. Saturday afternoon he called Mrs. Martinez to watch Mia for a few hours. The older woman was delighted. She'd been worried about Mia during the hospital stay and was happy to fuss over her. Ethan left them making cookies together and drove to Lena's apartment, his stomach in knots. She answered the door wearing jeans and a faded t-shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders. The apartment looked exactly the same as that first day, sparse, temporary, a space someone was occupying but not living in. "Hey," she said. "Come in. I made tea." They sat at her small table with mugs of chamomile tea that Ethan didn't really want. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lena said, "You wanted to talk?" "I got a phone call Thursday night from your old hospital." Her face went pale. "What did they say?" "That I should reconsider my childcare arrangements, that you have questionable judgment, that your actions cost them money." He watched her carefully. "They're trying to ruin you even now, even though you don't work for them anymore." Lena set her mug down with shaking hands. "I should have warned you. I should have known they'd do something like this. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. You did nothing wrong. But now they've dragged you into it." "Lena." He reached across the table, stopped just short of taking her hand. "I don't care what they say. I know what happened. You saved Mia's life. You've been nothing but good to us. Whatever they're trying to do, it doesn't change that." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her tea. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I've lost everything because I reported him. My job, my reputation, my entire career. And I'd do it again. Every single time. Because those kids mattered more than my comfort. I know. But sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. If standing up for what's right is worth being completely alone, with no prospects and no future, and nothing but an empty apartment and memories of what I used to be." The rawness in her voice cracked something in his chest. "You're not alone." "Aren't I?" She looked up at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I appreciate what you've given me, Ethan. These past few weeks with you and Mia, they've kept me going, but I know this isn't permanent. I know I'm just a temporary solution until you find real childcare. I know. What if I don't want to find someone else?" The words hung in the air between them. Lena blinked, confused. "What?" "What if I want you to stay? Not just for Mia, but—" He stopped, tried to organize thoughts that felt too big and too dangerous. "I've been alone since Mia was born. I told myself it was better that way. Safer. If I didn't let anyone in, they couldn't leave. But you just showed up in my life, and suddenly everything's different. Suddenly, I'm coming home and feeling happy instead of just tired. Suddenly there's someone who understands, who doesn't make me choose between being a dad and being a person." "Ethan, I'm terrified," he admitted. "Because everyone leaves. Eventually, something better comes along, or things get too hard, or they realize they don't want to deal with someone else's kid. And when you go, it's going to destroy us. Both of us. Mia already loves you, and I—" He couldn't finish, couldn't say the words that felt too big and too soon and too real. But Lena was staring at him like he'd just said something in a language she didn't understand. "You think I'm going to leave? Aren't you? Eventually? When you get back on your feet, when you find a real job, there is no real job." Her voice was sharp now, edged with something like anger. "I'm blacklisted, Ethan. No hospital will touch me. I've applied to 30 positions in the past 3 months, and I can't even get interviews. This isn't temporary for me. This is my life now." "Then stay." The words came out desperate. "Not just as childcare, as I don't know what. Part of our family, someone who belongs." Lena stood abruptly, paced to the window. Her shoulders were tense, her hands clenched at her sides. "You don't know what you're asking." "Yes, I do." "No." She spun to face him. "You're asking me to build a life around you and Mia when I have nothing to offer. No job, no money, no future. You're asking me to let myself need you when I've worked so hard not to need anyone. Because needing people means they can hurt you, means they can leave. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. But what happens when I'm not useful anymore? When Mia's older and doesn't need a babysitter? When you realize I'm just baggage weighing you down? That's not—" Ethan stood, moved toward her. "Lena, you're not baggage. I'm broken." The words came out raw, stripped of defenses. "I lost my career because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I lost everything I worked for because I couldn't just play politics like everyone else. And now I'm living in this shitty apartment with no prospects and no plan. And the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart is a temporary childcare arrangement that I've apparently deluded myself into thinking means something. It does mean something. Does it? Or am I just convenient? Someone to watch your kid so you don't have to pay for daycare. The accusation stung. Ethan felt anger flare, hot and defensive. That's not fair. Isn't it? Be honest, Ethan. Would you even be saying any of this if I hadn't been there when Mia got sick? If I hadn't been useful? This has nothing to do with everything is about being useful. Her voice rose, years of frustration bleeding through. That's all I've ever been. A useful nurse, a useful whistleblower, a useful babysitter. And when I'm not useful anymore, I'm nothing. I'm disposable. You think that's what you are to us? Disposable? I don't know what I am. She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. I don't know what this is, or what you want from me, or why you're saying these things when you barely know me. We're strangers, Ethan. We met a month ago. You don't love someone you met a month ago. The word hung between them, love, neither of them having said it, but both of them hearing it anyway. Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. All the walls he'd built, all the careful distance, crumbling under the weight of truth he'd been avoiding. You're right, he said quietly. I barely know you. I don't know your favorite color, or what you were like as a kid, or what you wanted to be before you decided on nursing. I don't know your middle name, or whether you like coffee, or tea, or what movies make you cry. Then what? But I know you stopped in the rain and let a stranger help you, even though every instinct probably told you not to. I know you show up every day for a kid who isn't yours and ask for nothing in return. I know you see problems and fix them without being asked. I know you put yourself on the line to protect children you'd never met, and when it cost you everything, you'd do it again. He moved closer, close enough to see the tears on her cheeks. I know that when my daughter was sick and I was falling apart, you were the calm in the storm. I know that coming home feels different now because you're there. And I know that if you leave, it's going to hurt worse than anything I've felt since Mia's mom walked out. Lena was shaking her head, but she wasn't backing away. You're just scared. You're scared of being alone again. And I'm convenient. You're not convenient. You're complicated and difficult, and you challenge me, and half the time I don't know what you're thinking. He reached out carefully and wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. But you're not disposable. Not to me. Not to Mia. And if you can't see that, then I've done a terrible job of showing you. Ethan, I'm not asking you to be useful. I'm asking you to stay because we need you. Because I need you. And if that's too much, if I'm moving too fast or wanting too much, then tell me and I'll back off. But don't leave because you think you don't matter. Don't leave because you're scared. She was staring at him, her face a mess of tears and confusion, and something that looked almost like hope. I don't know how to do this. How to let someone in. How to trust that it won't fall apart. Neither do I. He let his hand fall away, gave her space. But maybe we can figure it out together. What if I mess it up? What if I let you down? Then we'll deal with it. That's what people do. They mess up and they figure it out and they keep going. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. I'm so tired of being alone. But I'm terrified of not being alone, of needing someone and having them leave. I know, me too. They stood there in her empty apartment, two people who'd been drowning separately, trying to figure out if they could save each other or if they'd just pull each other under. Finally, Lena spoke. I need time to think about this, about what you're asking. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Okay, Ethan said. Take whatever time you need. I don't want to hurt Mia. If this doesn't work, if I can't, she's already attached to me. If I leave now, then don't leave. Not yet. Just keep doing what you've been doing. We'll figure out the rest as we go. She nodded slowly, wiping at her face. I should tell you something about why I really lost my job. You already told me. Not all of it. She took a shaky breath. The doctor I reported. He was performing surgery impaired, and I knew for weeks before I said anything. I kept telling myself I'd handle it through proper channels, that I'd document everything carefully. But I waited too long, and a kid died. The words fell like stones. A 6-year-old boy. Routine appendectomy. Should have been simple, but the doctor made mistakes, small ones that added up, complications that should have been caught. And by the time they realized how bad it was too late. Her voice cracked. I reported him the next day. Went straight to the licensing board. Burned every bridge I had. But it was too late for that little boy. Lena. So when you say I saved Mia's life, all I can think about is the life I didn't save. The one I could have saved if I'd been braver sooner. She met his eyes, and hers were full of pain. That's who I am. Someone who was useful too late. Ethan moved without thinking, closed the distance between them, and pulled her into his arms. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against him, sobbing into his shoulder. He held her while she cried, feeling her shake with the weight of guilt she'd been carrying alone. You can't save everyone, he said quietly. That boy's death wasn't your fault. I should have done something sooner. Maybe, but you did do something. You made sure he was the last one. That has to count for something. She cried harder, and he just held her, letting her grief soak into his shirt. Outside, the city hummed with traffic and voices and life continuing indifferently. Inside this spare apartment, two broken people clung to each other and tried to believe they deserved a second chance. When the tears finally subsided, Lena pulled back, wiping at her face. I'm sorry, I don't usually... Don't apologize. Not for this. She looked up at him, eyes red and face blotchy, and he thought she'd never looked more real, more human. I want to stay, she whispered. I want to believe this could work, but I'm so scared. Me too. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But maybe being scared together is better than being scared alone. She almost smiled. Almost. That's a terrible philosophy. Yeah, well, I'm making this up as I go. This time she did smile, watery but genuine. You're really bad at this. Terrible. Worst ever. He squeezed her hand. But I mean it, Lena. Whatever you need, time, space, patience, I'll give it to you. Just don't disappear. I won't. She took a shaky breath. I promise, I won't disappear. It felt fragile, that promise, like something that could break under pressure. But it was also something, a start, a foundation, a reason to hope. Ethan left her apartment an hour later after they'd talked through logistics and boundaries and what the next few weeks might look like. Nothing was solved, not really. But something had shifted. Some wall had cracked. On the drive home, his phone rang. Marcus. Hey man, you got a minute? Sure. What's up? Henderson job fell through, contractors being a nightmare. But I got something else. Bigger, actually. Full renovation on a commercial property downtown. 3 months of steady work, good pay. You interested? 3 months of steady work. The answer to prayers he hadn't let himself pray. Yeah, Ethan said. Absolutely. When do we start? Monday. I'll text you the details. Ethan hung up and sat in his truck for a moment, letting it sink in. A job. A real job with a timeline and steady income. Enough to catch up on bills and maybe even save a little. Enough to stop drowning for a while. He thought about Lena in her apartment, about the conversation they'd just had, about the terrifying possibility that maybe, they could build something real. For the first time in years, the future felt like something other than a list of problems to solve. It felt like possibility. When Ethan got home, Mia was curled up on Mrs. Martinez's couch watching cartoons, her color better than it had been all week. The older woman met him at the door with a knowing look. You were gone a long time. Had some things to discuss. He kept his voice neutral, but Mrs. Martinez had raised 4 kids and could read people like street signs. With the young lady who's been helping you? She handed him a plate of cookies wrapped in foil. She seems very nice, very responsible. She is, and very pretty. Mrs. Martinez, I'm just saying, mijo, you've been alone a long time. It's okay to let someone in. She patted his arm with surprising gentleness. Your daughter needs a father who's happy, not just surviving. He didn't know how to respond to that, so he just thanked her for watching Mia and carried his daughter back to their apartment. She was half asleep already, warm and solid in his arms, and he felt the familiar surge of fierce protectiveness mixed with something new. Hope, maybe. or just the terrifying possibility that life could be more than just making it through each day. The next few weeks found a rhythm that felt less temporary and more like building something. Ethan started the renovation job downtown, which meant early mornings and long days, but also a steady paycheck that made breathing easier. Lena continued coming by every afternoon, helping Mia with homework and making dinner, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, adding small touches to the apartment. A plant on the windowsill, books on the shelf that she'd picked up from a thrift store, her jacket hanging by the door more often than not. They didn't talk about what they were becoming. It felt too fragile to name, too easy to break with definitions. Instead, they existed in the spaces between, shared glances across the dinner table, hands brushing while washing dishes, Lena staying later each night until it became routine for her to tuck Mia in alongside him. Mia recovered fully, her lungs clear, and her energy back to its usual overwhelming levels. But something had changed in her too. She'd started calling Lena's apartment Lena's place instead of that building, started assuming Lena would be there for school events and parent-teacher conferences without asking. One evening, about 3 weeks after the hospital, Mia looked up from her homework and said, "Sarah from school says Lena's basically my mom now." Ethan's hand froze over the pot he was stirring. Lena, sitting at the table helping with math problems, went very still. "What did you say to that?" Ethan asked carefully. "I said she's not my mom. My mom left." Mia stated it matter-of-factly, no bitterness, just reality. "But I said she's kind of like a mom, except better because she actually wants to be here." Lena's eyes were bright with tears she was clearly trying to hide. "Mia, it's true. You help with homework and make snacks and come to my school stuff. That's what moms do, right? Except you're not my mom because that would be weird to just decide someone's your mom." She frowned, working through the logic. "So what are you?" "I'm your friend," Lena said softly. "Is that okay?" "I guess, but friends don't usually live here." "I don't live here, Bug," Lena reminded her gently. "You're here every day. That's basically living here." Mia turned to Ethan. "Why doesn't she just live here? Then she wouldn't have to go back to her apartment every night." "It's not that simple." "Why not? We have room. She could sleep on the couch, or you could share your room, or—" "Mia," Lena's voice was firm but kind. "Your dad and I are friends. Friends don't just move in together." "Why not?" "Because that's not how it works." "That's a dumb rule." Ethan caught Lena's eye across the table and saw his own confusion reflected back. They were building something, yes. But what? And how did you explain to a 7-year-old that adults made things complicated because they were scared of getting hurt? After Mia went to bed that night, they sat on the couch together, close but not touching, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. "I'm sorry about earlier," Ethan said. "She doesn't have a filter." "Don't apologize, she's just trying to make sense of this." Lena pulled her knees up to her chest. "Are we making sense of this?" "I don't know. Are we supposed to?" "I have no idea how this works. I've never—" She stopped, started again. "After I lost my job, I told myself I was done with people, done with caring about anything that could be taken away. And then you pulled over in the rain, and now I'm here every day, and I don't know what we're doing, but I don't want to stop." "Me neither. But Mia's asking questions, and I don't know how to answer them because I don't know what I am to you, to either of you." Ethan turned to face her, finally giving voice to the thought that had been growing for weeks. "What do you want to be?" "I don't know if I get to want things anymore." That's not an answer. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I want to belong somewhere. I want to stop feeling like I'm waiting for permission to exist. I want—" She stopped, swallowed hard. "I want what we have now to be real. Not just helping out. Not just convenient. Real." "It is real." "Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm still the woman who shows up and leaves. I don't have a key. I don't have a drawer. I'm not on any emergency contact forms. I'm just here." The words stung because they were true. He'd been holding back, keeping distance even while pulling her closer, protecting himself from the inevitable hurt while simultaneously making that hurt worse by letting her deeper into their lives. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Every person I've ever let in has left. My mom, Mia's mom, every girlfriend who promised they were okay with the single dad thing until they realized what it actually meant. And you're different. You matter more, which means it's going to hurt worse when you go. What makes you so sure I'm going to go? Because everyone does. I'm not everyone. She shifted to face him fully. I know what it's like to lose everything, Ethan. I've been there. I'm living there. And I know that what we have, what we're building, is the first thing in months that's made me feel like life might actually be worth showing up for. But what happens when something better comes along? When you find a real job, when you get your career back? I'm not getting my career back. That's done. I've accepted it. She reached out, took his hand carefully. I need you to hear me. I'm not waiting for something better. I'm trying to figure out if I'm allowed to want this, if I'm allowed to want you. Her hand in his felt like a question and an answer at the same time. He looked at their joined hands, at the woman who'd appeared in his life at the exact moment he'd needed her most, and felt something in his chest finally give way. I want you to stay, he said. Not just for Mia, for me. I want to come home and have you be here. I want to stop pretending this is temporary. He stopped, gathered courage. I want you to have a key and a drawer and to be on every emergency contact form that exists. I want you to be part of this family, if that's what you want too. Lena's eyes filled with tears. You're sure? Because I don't know how to do this halfway. If I stay, really stay, I'm all in. And if it falls apart, I don't know if I'll survive it. Then we don't let it fall apart. That's not a guarantee. No. But it's a promise to try. He squeezed her hand. I can't promise I won't mess up. I can't promise I won't get scared or pull back sometimes. But I can promise I'm not going anywhere. And I need you to promise the same thing. I promise. The words came out fierce, determined. I'm not running. Not from this. Not from you. They sat there as a quiet apartment, holding hands and trying to believe that broken people could build something whole together. After a moment, Lena leaned her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped an arm around her, and it felt like coming home. So what now? She asked. Now we tell Mia she was right, that you're basically living here anyway, so you might as well make it official. Lena laughed softly. She's going to be insufferable about being right. Absolutely. She's going to hold this over us for years. I can live with that. They stayed like that for a while, not talking, just being together. When Lena finally left that night, Ethan walked her to the door and kissed her forehead before he could think better of it. She looked up at him with surprise and something that looked like wonder. Tomorrow, he said, bring some of your stuff. Start moving in, for real. Okay. She smiled, genuine and bright. Tomorrow. The next few weeks were a blur of adjustment and small revelations. Lena moved in gradually, one carload at a time because she didn't have much, and what she did have fit easily into the spaces they made for her. She took over the couch at night, insisted she didn't need more, but Ethan caught her wincing about her back after a week and started researching better sleeping arrangements they could actually afford. Mia was thrilled. She helped Lena unpack, organized her books on the shelf, insisted on making welcome signs that they hung around the apartment. Having Lena there all the time meant more stability, more attention, more of the family feeling she'd been craving without knowing how to ask for it. But integration wasn't seamless. Lena had routines that clashed with theirs. She was particular about kitchen organization in a way that made Ethan's haphazard system look chaotic. She needed quiet in the mornings before coffee, while Mia was a tornado of energy from the moment she woke up. There were small tensions. Nothing major, but friction that came from three people learning to share space designed for two. One morning, about 2 weeks after Lena officially moved in, Ethan came out to find her reorganizing the entire kitchen while Mia sat at the table looking bewildered. What's happening? I'm creating a system, Lena said, elbow deep in a cabinet. The way things were organized made no sense. Plates should be near the dishwasher, glasses by the sink, and why are the pots in 3 different places? Because that's where they fit. That's not organization, that's just shoving things in cabinets. He felt a flash of irritation. It's worked fine for 5 years. Working fine and working well are different things. Lena, I appreciate the thought, but I don't need my kitchen reorganized at 7 in the morning. She turned to face him, holding a stack of mismatched plates. I'm trying to help. I didn't ask for help with the kitchen. Well, maybe you should. Maybe if things were better organized, you wouldn't spend 10 minutes every morning looking for Mia's lunch container. I spend 10 minutes looking for her lunch container because she never puts it back in the same place, not because the kitchen is disorganized. I put it back in the same place, Mia offered helpfully. Not now, Bug. They both said it simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Mia giggled. You guys sound like a married couple fighting. The observation hung in the air. Lena set down the plates carefully. I'm sorry, you're right. I shouldn't have just... This is your space. I'm overstepping. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, trying to locate patience he didn't quite feel before coffee. No, I'm sorry. I'm just not used to sharing space. And mornings are already chaotic. Can we maybe discuss kitchen reorganization at a time when I'm actually awake? Yeah, of course. She looked embarrassed now, which made him feel worse. They got through breakfast in awkward silence, Mia chattering nervously to fill the space. When Ethan left for work, he kissed Mia goodbye but hesitated with Lena, not sure of the protocol for leaving after a minor argument in a relationship that still felt too new to have established patterns. She solved it by hugging him quickly. Have a good day. You too. And Lena, the kitchen thing, we'll figure it out, okay? Okay? He thought about it all day on the job site, about how easy it had been to fall into old patterns of defending his space, his routines, about how Lena was trying to build a life with them, but kept defaulting to being useful, to fixing things, because that was the only way she knew how to justify her presence. That evening, he came home to find the kitchen exactly as he'd left it. Lena was helping Mia with homework, carefully cheerful, but there was a carefulness to her movements, like she was trying to take up less space. After Mia went to bed, he found Lena cleaning up from dinner with precise, quiet movements. Hey, he said, can we talk about this morning? There's nothing to talk about. You were right. I overstepped. Lena, I do this. I see a problem and I try to fix it, and I don't ask permission because I'm so used to just handling things myself. She set down the dish towel, faced him. I'm sorry. I'm still figuring out how to be part of something instead of just adjacent to it. I get that. But you don't have to ask permission to organize the kitchen. This is your home too now. I was just cranky and undercaffeinated, and I took it out on you. You weren't wrong, though. I was being controlling. Maybe a little, but I was being territorial. He moved closer, took her hands. We're both going to mess this up sometimes. We're going to step on each other's toes and get annoyed and have stupid arguments about kitchen organization. That's normal. I don't know what normal is anymore. Neither do I, so we'll figure it out together. He squeezed her hands. And for what it's worth, the kitchen probably does need better organization. I just need coffee before we tackle it. That got a small smile. Noted. No major home improvements before 9 a.m. Exactly. They figured out a compromise over the next few days. Lena organized the kitchen in stages, running each change by him first. It was slower, more collaborative, and by the end of the week they had a system that actually worked better for everyone. Small victory, but it felt significant, like they were learning each other's languages. The renovation job downtown was going well. Ethan was working with a crew of 3 other guys, and the steady schedule meant he could actually plan his days instead of just scrambling to find work. He was making real money for the first time in months, enough to pay down some debt and start thinking about the future beyond just survival. One Friday, Marcus pulled him aside during lunch break. Got a question for you. This job wraps in about 6 weeks, but the client's already talking about another property. Bigger project, probably 4 to 6 months of work. He asked specifically for you. Ethan felt something in his chest expand. Being asked for specifically, having his work recognized, it had been a long time. Yeah? What's the project? Converting an old warehouse into a community center. Medical clinic on the first floor, meeting spaces on the second, workshop areas in the basement. Big undertaking but solid pay, and it's steady work through the winter. Medical clinic? The words caught in his brain, and suddenly he was thinking about Lena, about her nursing skills going to waste, about how she'd mentioned once, quietly, that what she missed most wasn't the prestige or the paycheck, but the feeling of helping people who actually needed it. Can I think about it? Sure. Let me know by Monday. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. You've been doing good work, man. Client's impressed. Keep it up. That night, after Mia was asleep, Ethan told Lena about the job offer. "That's amazing," she said, genuinely happy for him. "6 months of steady work would be huge for you." "Yeah, but I was thinking the community center, the clinic part. What if that's something you could be involved in?" She went still. "What do you mean?" "I mean, they're going to need medical staff. And you're a trained pediatric nurse who's currently unemployed. What if we talk to them, see if there's an opportunity?" "Ethan, I'm blacklisted. No legitimate medical facility will hire me. This isn't a hospital. It's a community center. Different rules, different oversight, and it's not even built yet. We'd be getting in on the ground floor." He could see the idea taking shape as he spoke. "Think about it. You could help build something from scratch, something that actually serves people who need it, not just people who can pay for it. That's a lot of assumptions. We don't even know if they're hiring yet, or what they're looking for, but what if they are? What if this is exactly what you've been waiting for?" She looked torn between hope and fear. "I don't know if I can handle getting my hopes up just to have them destroyed again." "Then don't get your hopes up. Just let me ask the question. See what's possible." He took her hand. "You don't have to decide anything now, but at least let me find out the details." After a long moment, she nodded. "Okay, ask, but I'm not expecting anything." "Fair enough." Monday morning, Ethan found the client, a man named David Chen, who ran a nonprofit focused on underserved communities. They talked during a break, Chen explaining his vision for the center. "We want it to be a real resource," Chen said. "Not just another underfunded clinic that can barely keep the lights on. Proper medical care, mental health services, community programs, a place where people can actually get help." "What about staffing for the medical side?" "That's the challenge, finding qualified people who want to work in this neighborhood, who understand the community, who aren't just doing it for their resume." Chen shrugged. "Why do you ask?" Ethan took a breath. "I might know someone. Pediatric ICU nurse, highly trained, excellent with kids. She's been out of work for a while because she reported a doctor for malpractice and got blacklisted for it." Chen's eyebrows went up. "She reported malpractice and got punished?" "She did the right thing, and the hospital retaliated. Made it impossible for her to get hired anywhere else." He met Chen's eyes. "But she's exactly the kind of person you'd want in a community clinic. Someone who puts patients first, even when it costs her." "I'd like to meet her." "Really?" "Really. Have her call my office. Let's set up a conversation." Chen handed him a business card. "No promises, but I'm interested in people who have principles. Hard to find in healthcare these days." Ethan practically floated through the rest of the day. When he got home, Lena was making dinner while Mia set the table, and the whole scene was so domestic, so normal, that he had to stop in the doorway and just take it in. "What?" Lena asked, noticing his stare. "I talked to the client. He wants to meet you." She nearly dropped the spoon she was holding. "What?" "I told him about your background, about why you're not working, and he said he wants to have a conversation. No promises, but he's interested." Lena sat down heavily in one of the kitchen chairs. I'm not ready for this." "You don't have to be ready. Just talk to him. See what he's building." "What if he offers me something and I mess it up? What if I get there and I've forgotten how to be a nurse? What if it works out?" Mia chimed in, not really understanding but sensing the importance. "What if it's really good?" Lena looked at Mia, then at Ethan, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes. Fear versus hope. Safety versus possibility. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll call him. I'll have the conversation. But I can't promise I won't panic and back out." "That's fair. Just take it one step at a time." She called the next day and set up a meeting for that Friday. The days leading up to it were tense, Lena alternating between excitement and terror, trying on different outfits, practicing answers to questions that hadn't been asked yet. Ethan had never seen her this nervous, not even in the hospital with Mia. Friday morning, she was pale and shaking as she got ready to leave. What if he hates me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if he's already heard about me from the hospital? Then you come home and we figure out plan B. Ethan adjusted her collar, which didn't need adjusting. "But Lena, you're an incredible nurse. You saved my daughter's life. Don't forget that when you're in there." She kissed him, quick and nervous, then headed out. Ethan tried to work, but he couldn't focus. He kept checking his phone, waiting for updates that didn't come. By the time Lena walked back through the door 3 hours later, he'd nearly worn a path in the floor from pacing. "Well?" he asked. She stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile broke across her face. "He offered me a position, nurse coordinator for the pediatric clinic. I'd be involved in the planning, the setup, hiring other staff, building the programs. It's part-time to start, but once the center opens, it would be full-time with benefits." Ethan felt something in his chest burst open. "Lena, that's incredible. I told him I needed to think about it." "What? Why?" "Because it's terrifying. Because it's everything I thought I'd lost. Because I don't know if I can handle having something this important and risking losing it again." She was crying now, happy and scared at the same time. "Because what if I mess it up?" He pulled her into his arms, held her while she shook. "You won't mess it up. And even if something goes wrong, you'll handle it. That's what you do." "I'm so scared." "I know, but you don't have to be scared alone anymore." She pulled back, wiped at her eyes. "He said something else. He said he'd heard about me, about what I did at Riverside Medical. And he said the community needs more people who are willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." He's right. I've spent so long thinking I destroyed my career. But what if this is actually better? What if this is where I was supposed to end up all along? Then take the job. Build something amazing. Show everyone who gave up on you that they were wrong. Lena nodded slowly, determination replacing fear in her expression. "Okay. I'm going to do it. I'm going to call him Monday and accept." When Mia got home from school that day and heard the news, she screamed with excitement and insisted on making celebratory cupcakes, even though none of them really knew how to bake. They ended up with lopsided, slightly burnt cupcakes that tasted terrible but felt perfect anyway, the three of them laughing in the kitchen while frosting got everywhere. That night, after Mia was asleep and they'd cleaned up the baking disaster, Ethan and Lena sat on the couch together. She'd been quiet for a while, thoughtful, and he let her have the silence. "Thank you," she said finally, "for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, for pushing me to try. You would have done the same for me." "I hope so." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "This is real, isn't it? Us, Mia, this life we're building, it's actually happening." "Yeah, it is. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, for it to fall apart. Things probably will go wrong sometimes. That's life. But we'll handle it together." She turned to look at him, and in her eyes he saw the same hope and fear he was feeling, the terrifying vulnerability of letting someone matter this much. "I love you," she said quietly. "I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. And it scares me more than anything." His heart was pounding. "I love you too. And yeah, it's terrifying, but it's also the best thing that's happened to me in years." They sat there in the quiet apartment, holding each other and trying to believe they deserved this happiness. Outside, the city continued its indifferent rhythm, but inside, three broken pieces were slowly forming something whole, something that looked a lot like family, something worth fighting for. The weeks that followed felt like learning to walk on new legs. Lena accepted the position at the community center and threw herself into planning with an intensity that was both inspiring and slightly concerning. She spent hours sketching clinic layouts on napkins, researching pediatric care models for underserved populations, making lists of equipment and supplies they'd need. Ethan would find her at 2 a.m. with papers spread across the coffee table, dark circles under her eyes, but genuine excitement in her expression. "You need to sleep," he'd say, and she'd wave him off. "I will. I just need to finish this protocol for intake procedures." "Lena, the building isn't even finished yet. You have time." "I know, but I keep thinking about all the kids who need this, who've needed it for years. I don't want to waste a single day once we're operational." He understood the drive. It was the same thing that had kept him working double shifts when Mia was a baby, the desperate need to prove worth through productivity. But he also recognized the danger in it. The way throwing yourself into work could be another form of running away. "Come to bed," he'd say, taking the pen from her hand. "The protocols will still be there in the morning." She'd resist, then relent, and they'd curl up together on his too small bed in his too small room, learning the geography of each other in the darkness. It wasn't always easy. Some nights Lena would wake up gasping from nightmares about the boy who died, about surgeries gone wrong, about losing everything again. Ethan would hold her and remind her where she was, who she was now, that the past didn't get to write the future. Other nights it was him who couldn't sleep, lying awake and catastrophizing about all the ways this could fall apart. What if Lena realized she'd settled for less than she deserved? What if the job fell through and she resented him for encouraging her? What if Mia got attached and then Lena left and he had to pick up the pieces of his daughter's broken heart? But morning always came, and with it the routine that was slowly becoming their normal. Mia bouncing into their room at ungodly hours demanding breakfast, coffee brewing while they navigated around each other in the small kitchen. The comfortable silence of people learning to share space without explanation. 2 months after Lena accepted the position, construction on the community center was progressing ahead of schedule. David Chen invited the future staff to tour the site, and Lena asked Ethan and Mia to come with her. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked. "This is your thing. You don't need us tagging along." "I want you there. This is happening because of you. Because you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." She looked at him seriously. "I want you to see what we're building." So they went, the three of them, on a crisp Saturday morning in late fall. The warehouse was a skeleton of exposed beams and half-finished walls, but the bones of something meaningful were visible. Chen walked them through, pointing out where different spaces would be. Clinic here on the first floor. Waiting room, 4 exam rooms, a small lab for basic testing. Second floor will have meeting spaces for community programs, support groups, that kind of thing. And down in the basement, he led them down a concrete stairwell to a large open space. "This is where Ethan comes in. We want to turn this into a workshop, tool library for the community, space for teaching basic home repair skills, maybe some woodworking classes for kids." Ethan looked around the space, saw potential in the raw concrete and exposed pipes. "This could be really good." "That's what I'm hoping. I want this place to be more than just medical care. I want it to address the whole picture: health, housing, skills, community connection." Chen smiled. "Lena tells me you're excellent at building things. Would you be interested in helping set this up?" Paid position, obviously. Part of the permanent staff. The offer hung in the air like a gift Ethan wasn't sure he was allowed to accept. "You want me to run the workshop?" "I want you to build it, design it, equip it, run it. Teach people how to fix their own homes instead of paying contractors they can't afford. You'd be good at it." Ethan looked at Lena, who was watching him with barely contained hope. Then at Mia, who was exploring the space with wide-eyed wonder. Then back at this room that could become something meaningful. "Yeah," he said. "I'm interested." They spent the afternoon discussing details, making plans, dreaming out loud about what the center could become. Walking back to the truck later, Mia between them holding both their hands, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just hope, but certainty. Like pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known he was solving had finally clicked into place. "We're really doing this," Lena said quietly. "Building something together." "Yeah, we are. I'm terrified." "Me too, but the good kind of terrified." She laughed. "I don't think there's a good kind of terrified." "Sure there is. It's the kind that means something matters enough to be scared of losing it." Mia tugged on their hands, oblivious to the weight of the conversation. "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" They got ice cream, sat in the truck in the parking lot eating it, while Mia chattered about how cool the community center was going to be, and could she help paint the walls, and did they know that her friend Emma's mom couldn't afford to go to the doctor when she was sick, and now the community center would be there to help people like Emma's mom. The casual way she said it, the easy assumption that helping people was what you did, made Ethan's chest tight. This was what good parenting looked like. Not perfection, not having all the answers, but modeling compassion and follow-through. Showing up when it mattered. Lena was teaching his daughter that, just by being herself. November bled into December. The community center took shape with increasing speed, and Ethan found himself spending more time there alongside his regular renovation work. He and Lena would sometimes go to the site together in the evenings after Mia was in bed, walking through the spaces and talking about their plans. It felt like building a future in real time, brick by literal brick. One evening, standing in what would soon be the pediatric clinic, Lena turned to him with an expression he couldn't quite read. I need to tell you something. His stomach dropped. Okay? I got a call yesterday from the medical board. They're reopening the case against Dr. Morrison, the doctor I reported. There's new evidence, another complaint from a different hospital. They want me to testify again. That's good, right? It means they're taking it seriously. It also means going back through everything, reliving it, putting myself in front of people who hate me and think I ruined an innocent man's career. Her voice shook slightly. And it means possibly facing him, having to look at him and tell the truth again while he sits there with his expensive lawyers making me out to be vindictive and unstable. Ethan moved closer, took her hands. Do you have to do it? I don't legally have to. But morally? If I don't testify and something happens to another kid because he's still practicing somewhere, she trailed off. I have to. I know I have to, but I'm so tired of fighting. I just want to move forward. Then we'll fight together. You won't be alone in this. You'd come with me? To the hearing? If you want me there, I'll be there. And if you don't want me there, I'll be waiting when you get home, whatever you need. She pulled him into a hug, holding on tight. How did I get so lucky? Meeting you in the rain like that? Having you actually stop and help instead of just driving past like everyone else? I think about that sometimes. What would have happened if I'd kept driving? If I'd been 30 seconds later or earlier and missed you completely? We wouldn't be here, building this life. No. He pulled back to look at her. But we are here, and whatever comes next, we'll handle it. The hearing was scheduled for mid-December, just as the community center was entering final stages of construction. Lena spent the weeks leading up to it preparing her testimony, reviewing medical records, working with the board's attorneys. The stress showed in the tightness around her eyes, the way she'd clench her jaw when she thought no one was looking. Ethan tried to support her without smothering her, which was harder than it sounded. He wanted to fix this, to protect her from the pain of reliving trauma, but all he could really do was be present. Make sure she ate. Remind her to sleep. Listen when she needed to talk and provide silence when words weren't enough. The night before the hearing, Lena was too anxious to sleep. They sat on the couch together, her head on his shoulder, and she talked about the boy who'd died. His name was Jacob. He'd been 6 years old, loved dinosaurs, wanted to be a paleontologist. His parents had trusted the hospital, trusted the doctor, believed their son was in good hands. I think about them sometimes, Lena said quietly. Jacob's parents. How they probably hate me for not doing something sooner. How they're right to hate me. They don't hate you. You're not the one who hurt their son. But I could have prevented it. If I'd been braver, if I'd acted faster. You did act. You reported him. You made sure he couldn't hurt anyone else. That has to count for something. It doesn't bring Jacob back. No. But it might save the next kid. And the one after that. You can't fix the past, Lena. You can only do better going forward. That's all any of us can do. She was quiet for a long time. Then, when did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who's made plenty of mistakes and learned that beating yourself up doesn't change anything. It just makes you hurt longer. She turned to kiss him, soft and grateful, and they stayed like that for a while, finding comfort in proximity. The hearing was held in a downtown government building, all marble floors and intimidating architecture designed to make people feel small. Ethan sat in the gallery with his hands clenched in his lap while Lana gave her testimony, calm, professional, devastating in its clarity. She walked through the timeline of events, the warning signs she'd noticed, her attempts to address concerns through proper channels, the final decision to go to the licensing board. Dr. Morrison's attorney tried to rattle her, suggested she was vindictive, implied she'd made up concerns because of a personal grudge. But Lena stood firm, her voice never wavering, her facts irrefutable. When they showed medical records documenting the mistakes that had led to Jacob's death, several board members looked ill. The doctor himself sat stone-faced through it all, expensive suit and practiced expressions of wounded dignity. He looked like someone who'd never faced real consequences in his life and still couldn't quite believe it was happening. The hearing lasted 6 hours. By the end, Ethan could see exhaustion carved into every line of Lena's body. But she'd done it. She'd faced down the man who'd destroyed her career and told the truth without flinching. In the parking lot afterward, she collapsed against him. It's done. I actually did it. You were incredible in there. So strong. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's allowed. You just did the hardest thing you've probably ever done. He held her steady. Come on. Let's go home. Home. The word still felt new enough to be precious. They'd started calling the apartment that somewhere along the way, not his apartment, not where he lived with Mia, but home. The place where all three of them belonged. When they got back, Mrs. Martinez had Mia at her place and reported that she'd been good as gold. Mia bounced out full of energy and questions. How did it go? Did you tell them the truth? Is the bad doctor going to get in trouble? I told them the truth, Lena said, kneeling down to Mia's level. And now they have to decide what happens next. But I did my part. I'm proud of you. Mia hugged her fiercely. You're the bravest person I know. Lena's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot. That night, after Mia was asleep, Ethan found Lena sitting on the floor of what was technically his room, but had become theirs, surrounded by boxes. What's all this? I was thinking about space, how we're all crammed in here, and Mia's getting bigger, and eventually she's going to need privacy. Lena looked up at him. What if we looked for a bigger place? Somewhere with 3 bedrooms, maybe a small yard for Mia. A real home instead of just surviving in 2 small spaces. That costs money we don't have. We will have it once the community center opens and we're both working steady jobs. We could start looking, at least. See what's possible. Ethan sat down next to her, thought about what she was really asking. Not just about apartments, but about commitment, about building something permanent instead of temporary. You want to do this long term, he said. Not just see how it goes, but actually plan a future together. I want to stop waiting for permission to want things. I want to admit that I love you and Mia, and I want to build a life with you. A real one, with plans and goals and stability. She took his hand. Unless that's too much, unless I'm moving too fast, you're not moving too fast. I want that too. I've just been too scared to say it out loud. Scared of what? Scared that if I admit how much I want this, how much I need you, it'll all fall apart. Like wanting something too much is bad luck. Lena squeezed his hand. I think we're past bad luck. I think we've both had enough of that for a lifetime. Maybe it's time to try good luck instead. Is that a thing? Good luck? I don't know. But we won't find out if we don't try. They started looking at apartments the following week. It was depressing at first. Everything in their price range was either too small, too far from schools and the community center, or in neighborhoods that made Ethan's protective instincts scream. But they kept looking, Lena poring over listings during her lunch breaks, Ethan checking places out on weekends while Mia drew elaborate floor plans of her dream bedroom. 2 weeks before Christmas, they found it. A 3-bedroom apartment in a building that had seen better days but was structurally sound, with a landlord who seemed reasonable and a rent they could actually afford if they combined their incomes. It had a small balcony that looked out over a pocket park, hardwood floors that needed refinishing, and a kitchen with actual counter space. It's perfect, Mia declared, running from room to room. This is my room, and that's your room, and this can be the room for when we have guests, or maybe a baby someday. Ethan and Lena looked at each other over her head, something passing between them that didn't need words. Not now, not soon, but someday. The possibility hanging there like a promise. They signed the lease that afternoon, gave notice on both their old apartments, and spent the next 2 weeks packing up their separate lives to merge them into one. It was chaos, boxes everywhere, Mia's excitement making everything take twice as long, the logistics of moving with limited help and tighter budgets. But it was also joyful. Every item they packed, every decision about what to keep and what to let go felt like choosing their future together. Moving day was the Saturday before Christmas. Marcus and a couple of guys from the construction crew showed up to help, along with Mrs. Martinez, who kept everyone fed with homemade tamales. By evening, they had everything in the new place, a disaster of boxes and furniture in wrong rooms, but theirs. Really theirs. After everyone left and Mia was passed out on the couch, surrounded by packing paper, Ethan and Lena stood in their new bedroom looking at the space that would be just for them. We did it, Lena said. We actually built something. Yeah, we did. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder. You know what I was thinking about today? What? That night I saw you at the bus stop. How easy it would have been to just keep driving. How close I came to not stopping. But you did stop. Best decision I ever made, even when I didn't know it yet. He turned her to face him. I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. You changed everything. You changed everything for me too. I was drowning and you threw me a lifeline, and then you let me be part of something instead of just someone you rescued. She reached up to touch his face. Thank you for seeing me, for believing I was worth saving. You saved yourself. I just gave you a ride in the rain. No, you gave me a reason to keep going. You and Mia both. They kissed, slow and sweet, in their new bedroom, in their new home, while their daughter slept in the living room and the future stretched out ahead of them, full of possibility. Christmas came and went in a blur of happiness. Mia got the art supplies she'd been wanting, and they spent the morning drawing together at their new kitchen table. Lena cooked dinner, her first attempt at a full holiday meal, which was slightly burned but tasted like love anyway. They ate on mismatched plates because they still hadn't fully unpacked, and Mia declared it the best Christmas ever. In January, the community center officially opened. There was a small ceremony with the mayor and some local press, David Chen giving a speech about serving the community and second chances. Lena stood next to Ethan, her hand in his, while Mia sat in the front row beaming with pride. Lena's clinic opened its doors the next day. The waiting room filled immediately. Parents who'd been putting off care because they couldn't afford it, kids who needed checkups and vaccinations, families who'd been turned away from other facilities. Lena worked 12-hour days that first week, coming home exhausted but genuinely happy. There was this little girl today, she told Ethan one evening, curled up on their couch in their living room. She'd been having seizures for months, but her parents couldn't afford to take her to a neurologist. We got her set up with a specialist, worked out a payment plan, made sure she got the medication she needed. Her mom cried when I told her we'd figure it out, that she didn't have to choose between her daughter's health and paying rent. You're doing exactly what you were meant to do. It feels like it. For the first time in forever, I'm not just surviving, I'm actually living, actually making a difference again. The workshop opened a week later. Ethan taught basic home repair classes on weekends, helped people fix leaky faucets and patch drywall and install new door locks. The tool library became popular quickly, people borrowing equipment they couldn't afford to buy, learning skills that would save them money and give them independence. One Saturday, a woman came in with her teenage son, asking if Ethan could teach them how to fix the hole in their wall from last winter's pipe burst. They worked through the repair together, Ethan showing them the process step by step, and at the end the woman pulled him aside. My landlord wanted to charge us $800 for this, said he'd take it out of our deposit. You just saved us from being evicted. That's what we're here for. No, you don't understand. We were going to be homeless next month, and now we're not, because you took the time to teach us instead of just doing it for us. She gripped his hand. Thank you. Really. He thought about that conversation all week, about how small acts, stopping for a stranger, teaching a skill, offering hope, could ripple out in ways you never expected. How the choice to help someone in the rain could become a clinic saving lives and a workshop keeping families housed. How healing happened in moments of connection, in choosing to see people's humanity instead of their utility. February brought the verdict in Dr. Morrison's case. The medical board revoked his license permanently, citing gross negligence and patient endangerment. Lena got the call while she was at work, stepped outside to take it, and sat on the curb crying for 20 minutes. When Ethan found her there during his lunch break, she looked up at him with red eyes and something that might have been peace. It's over. He can't practice medicine anymore. He can't hurt anyone else. You did that. You stopped him. It doesn't bring Jacob back. No. But it might save dozens of other kids, maybe hundreds over the years. That matters, Lena. What you did matters. She stood, let him hold her while she cried. Not with grief this time, but with release. The weight she'd been carrying for so long finally lifting. I need to do something, she said. For Jacob. For his family. Something to honor his memory. They brainstormed ideas over the next few weeks. Finally, Lena proposed creating a patient advocacy fund at the community center. Something to help families navigate the medical system, to give them resources to speak up when something felt wrong, to ensure that no one else felt powerless in the face of medical negligence. David Chen loved the idea. They named it the Jacob Morrison Memorial Patient Advocacy Fund, and Lena worked with Jacob's parents to design it. It was painful and beautiful, the family grateful to Lena for fighting, for caring, for making sure their son's death meant something. Spring arrived with the kind of optimism that felt earned rather than naive. The community center was thriving, serving hundreds of families a month. Lena's clinic had a waiting list, and she was training 2 new nurses to help with the load. Ethan's workshop was packed every weekend, and he'd started a mentorship program for teenagers interested in construction trades. Mia was flourishing. Her grades were better. She'd made new friends in the neighborhood, and she'd started volunteering at the clinic on Saturdays, helping with intake, coloring with kids in the waiting room, soaking up Lena's lessons about compassion and service. One evening in late April, almost a year after that rainy night at the bus stop, Ethan came home from the center to find Lena and Mia baking cookies together. Flour covered the kitchen, Mia was wearing more chocolate chips than had made it into the dough, and they were laughing about something ridiculous. He stood in the doorway watching them, his daughter and the woman he loved, building memories in the kitchen of the home they'd created together, and felt something settle in his chest. Not happiness exactly, though he was happy. Something deeper. Contentment, maybe. The feeling of being exactly where you were meant to be. "Daddy!" Mia noticed him. "We're making cookies for the new family that moved in downstairs. Lena says it's good to welcome people." Lena's right. He moved into the kitchen, kissed Lena hello, ruffled Mia's hair. "This is perfect." "Perfect is a strong word," Lena said, gesturing at the mess. "This is chaos with good intentions." "Oh, my favorite kind of chaos." They delivered the cookies later, introducing themselves to the young couple with a newborn who looked overwhelmed and grateful for the kindness. Walking back upstairs, Mia between them again, Ethan thought about cycles. How they'd been welcomed by Mrs. Martinez when they'd moved to their old building. How that kindness had mattered. How they were paying it forward now, creating the community they wanted to live in. That night, after Mia was asleep, Ethan found Lena on the balcony looking out at the park. Rain was starting to fall, light and steady, and she had her face tilted up to catch it. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, joining her. That night, at the bus stop, how I'd given up. How I was standing there in the rain thinking that maybe this was it, maybe I'd finally hit bottom and there was nowhere left to fall. And then I pulled over. And then you pulled over. She smiled at him. "I thought you were crazy. Or dangerous, or both. I almost didn't get in the truck." "I'm glad you did." "Me too." She took his hand. "I was thinking about something else too, about how we both thought we were broken beyond repair, how we'd convinced ourselves that being alone was safer than risking getting hurt again. We were wrong." "Yeah, we were wrong." She leaned into him. "Being together doesn't mean we don't get hurt. It just means we don't have to hurt alone, and that makes all the difference." They stood there in the rain, 2 people who'd found each other at the exact moment they'd needed finding, and watched the city lights blur through the water. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, bills to pay, problems to solve, the endless work of building a life. But tonight, they had this. Each other. Mia sleeping safely in her room, a home that felt like belonging. 6 months later, on a crisp October evening, Ethan asked Lena to marry him. Nothing fancy, just the 3 of them on the balcony where they'd stood in the rain, Mia bouncing with barely contained excitement because she'd helped pick out the ring. Lena said yes before he'd even finished asking, tears streaming down her face, and Mia screamed loud enough that their downstairs neighbors probably heard in the next county. They got married in December, a small ceremony at the community center with the people who mattered. Mia was the flower girl and took the responsibility so seriously she practiced walking for days. Marcus was best man. David Chen officiated. Mrs. Martinez cried through the whole thing. Lena wore a simple dress, no veil, her hair loose the way Ethan loved it. When they exchanged vows, she promised to love him and Mia for exactly who they were, flaws and fears and all. He promised to build a life with her worth staying for, to be brave enough to let her in even when it scared him. Mia's voice piped up during the ceremony. "Can I promise something too?" The officiant looked flustered, but Lena and Ethan both nodded. "I promise to always put my lunch container back in the right place, and to love both of you forever." Everyone laughed, and Ethan felt his heart might actually burst. The reception was loud and chaotic and perfect. They danced in the workshop Ethan had built, surrounded by tools and community and love. When it was late and most people had left, the three of them snuck outside to look at the stars. "This is really happening," Lena said quietly. "We're actually a family." "We've been a family for a while now," Ethan said. "This just makes it official." "I like official." Mia squeezed between them. "Can we have cake for breakfast tomorrow since it's a special occasion?" "Absolutely not." "Worth a try." They stood there together, three people who'd all been broken in different ways, who'd found each other in the rain and chosen to build something whole. Not perfect. They still had bad days, still fought about kitchen organization and work stress, and whose turn it was to take out the trash. But they had each other, and that was enough. More than enough. In the distance, thunder rumbled. Rain started to fall, light at first and then heavier. They should have gone inside, but nobody moved. Instead, they tilted their faces to the sky and let the water wash over them, laughing and alive, and finally, home. Because some storms you run from, and some storms lead you exactly where you need to be. The trick is knowing which is which, and being brave enough to stop when it matters. Ethan had stopped. Lena had let him help. Mia had opened her heart to someone new. And from those small acts of courage, they'd built a family that proved the most important truth any of them would ever learn. You don't have to be perfect to deserve love. You don't have to have it all figured out to build something beautiful. You just have to show up. To be honest, to choose connection over safety, vulnerability over protection, hope over fear. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to do that, when you're willing to stand in the rain and believe that someone might actually stop, you get exactly what you didn't know you were looking for. You get home.